Hi, everybody, and welcome to round 6 of the European Team Championships. Today we have England Open Team against Switzerland and England Women's Team against Croatia. So let's have a look at the positions. What we did notice was that there have been 2 Berlin defences. So you're already warned about that.
Sounds like Natasha doesn't want an audience today. She just wants, just wants a little private.
I'll do it in the first 2 minutes before people notice we're online yet. And,
exactly.
And then say, well, I did tell you.
Well, actually, I talked the other day about the sort of most interesting options White has for avoiding the Berlin endgame. And, neither of these are sort of riveting tactical battles, but they've both got some obvious content, and I think we've seen, and what we will see is 2 different ways in which White tries to avoid the Berlin ending. So and actually, by the way, both the 2 Berlin defenses are the 2 games in which England is black. So
okay,
our
so
boys are
on that, the age-old strategy of trying to win with white and draw with black. Is that?
Well, that's certainly one interpretation, but David and Luke, to be honest, they're both players who play the Berlin defence for a win with black and have plenty of wins with black to their credit with it. So I think it can be a bit of a caricature. I think you could describe it as a safety first approach in that you're going to make sure you get a playable position before you're playing for the win. But no, it would be a great exaggeration in both their cases to say they just play this opening for a draw. But it's a straight bat. It's a solid approach. Okay, so let's have a look.
In terms of this overall match, we're probably slight favourites, aren't we, to win this match against?
Well, to be honest, I think we on paper we've been slight favourites for most of the matches we've played. But the problem is these days, particularly anytime you need to win with the black pieces these days is tough. And just generally the standard of play is very high, and relatively small rating differences can sort of disappear in the air. And all the matches have been pretty tough, and I think we desperately need a match in which we really are able. And we did it against Albania, who were probably slightly weaker than our other opponents, and we need to do it again where we show that this team really is clearly a little bit stronger than the opponents. But Switzerland is an experienced and very decent team who they're sort of typical team who are in at least the upper middle of all these European championships and things, and obviously higher than that in Olympiads. They're a very solid team and experienced players, as we'll see. Okay, so the first Berlin defence.
Here we go. Bishop b5 and knight
6. So I said before that if White wants to avoid the endgame, they have 2 basic approaches. One is to play d3 and then play a sort of more positional approach. Another is to castle, and after knight takes e4, not to play d4, but to play rook e1. And in these 2 games, we're going to see both of those.
Okay. So approach number,
whichever order you want to take it in. Approach number 2, as I said it, and number 1 as it's on the screen, which is a competent bit of commentating. So rook e1. So this is White wins the pawn back. And the reason these positions might have a reputation for not being that exciting is that you often end up with a symmetrical pawn structure because both e-pawns are gone, and unless White kind of takes the knight on c6 at some point, that's the only sort of structural thing that's going on. So the positions are slow and maneuvering, but it's the same pawn structure you get from an exchange French, which probably doesn't sort of do a great deal for its reputation either. But actually, one thing people have shown in recent years is how much content you can put into a game, even with apparently not so exciting pawn structures. And I think we'll see that this game has some interest. So obviously White's threatening to take on c6, discovered check. Black can take the knight on e5 and just play bishop e7, but I think there's a lot to be said for Luke's approach of playing just bishop e7 first.
Sure. And so White could, I suppose, in theory, take on c6 here.
White could take on c6 with the knight, so inflicting, mild structural damage and keeping the bishop pair, but I don't think that's very exciting.
Hi, Thomas. How are you doing?
Here. That's good. He was promising he might pay us a visit this afternoon. Good to see you, Tom. Okay. So and White could take with the bishop, but I think this would be a nice version of a kind of bishop pair for pawn structure trade-off for black, because easy development and all that. By far the main line is to retreat the bishop, and as often in these situations, once rook e1's been played, it's amazing how often a light square bishop for white belongs back where it started.
Yep.
I'll avoid the religious argument, but it's kind of where it belongs, So knight f5, yeah, okay. Now that's one of two methods by which black plays this, and now I think white needs to consider, again, white gets the option to take on c6, but in terms of the rest of his development, that doesn't really make that much sense. It makes more sense to support the d4 advance, so I'm pretty sure, from memory, I'm pretty sure knight f3 is the main move here, and this is the one which sets up these kind of French exchange type structures. But one of the things to watch for black is whether he can make a virtue of that knight on f5. It may well, after he's played d5, it may well come back to d6. Black needs to find a way to develop his pieces around that knight on f5. So black's got more pieces out, but there's a sort of quality-quantity thing going on in assessing black's development.
Yeah, so is f5 like a clumsy
Is that knight going to get in the way of your bishop, for example? That's the question, So black gets d5 in first, white plays d4. Black is well advised to get his king out of the way. And now, okay, a4. There are many different approaches white's played to try to get a sort of little nibbling edge here. Some lines with g3 and redeploying the bishop to g2. And other lines which I don't recall right now. I think sometimes white plays c3 and bishop d3 sort of a la French exchange, because I said the bishop belonged on f1 when the pawn was still on d2, but once white's played d4, there may be a case for putting it back on d3 again. So a4 is interesting. I guess white's just trying to claim some space on the queen side and trying to say that black probably, I'm guessing black probably isn't so comfortable about playing his pawn to a5, although it's not immediately obvious.
White might try and grab some more space with a5.
Well, I think white probably is going to try and grab some more space. Yeah, it looks like he's got a plan to do things on the queen side with his pawns in preference to just trying to, speed up his development. Because it's still a matter of, both sides have castled. White has a rook on e1, which is kind of developed. But, in terms of minor pieces, black's still 3-1 up. But the next few white moves are going to be pawn moves. So, again, with a relatively simple structure, a numerical development advantage in development like this might not amount to that much. It's a question of where you can find ideas and pawn breaks and so on.
Yeah, I might be tempted.
It's quite dry, but it's interesting at the same time to see what white tries to make here.
Yeah. So Luke doesn't go a5.
Luke's obviously decided he's not worried about this a5 idea, so he's going to improve that knight on f5. Like we said, once he moves that knight, he can look to better squares to develop the c8 bishop. And of course, the knight itself might come to play a role as well. It's, I think it's about to go to e4, isn't it? So that's interesting. It's also an interesting that white decides he doesn't have to worry about knight to e4.
So c3.
I described it being exchange French-like. It also, can be reminiscent of the Petrov as well. You get these kind of lines. And in some of those lines, black plays, knight e4 and even supports it with f5 sometimes and uses it to sort of... So, it's interesting comparisons with other openings. c3, so white sort of declaring that he's not worried about black playing knight e4, and also that he doesn't regard gaining further space with a5 as an urgent priority, although I think it's very much on his agenda.
Yeah, because I was thinking white would have to play c3 to stop any tricks with like a bishop b4 and then someone taking on a5 or something like that. This was before black hopped the knight back to d6.
Yeah, that's true, actually. If there's no knight.
I guess after knight e4, that would be a threat if you hadn't done c3.
Yes, I guess from black's point of view, wasn't worth keeping that idea on in the position, given that white appears to be quite happy to play c3 anyway. So.
Yeah.
But yes, it's a thought, isn't it? Because white clearly doesn't. I'm pretty sure white wants to keep minor pieces on the board mostly here. Although that knight on e4 will probably get challenged.
Okay.
Yeah, no, indeed. There's some exciting things happening on the other boards. Maybe we'll speed this up a little bit. So knight e4, a5. Yeah, I think a6 black is just worth saying that an a6 by white black really does want to avoid, because that would soften up some white squares on the queen side, enable white to maybe put pressure on that c6 knight after black had to play b6 or something. I think a6 by black is almost essential after a5. And queen b3. And here we go. Luke is, like I said, Petrov style, having got that knight to e4. He's now willing to take some slight risks, I'd say, positionally, in order to support it. And then it becomes the basis sometimes for a kingside attack. And around here, I sort of remind you of what I said earlier. Players like Luke definitely play the Berlin, definitely not just with trying to equalise and make a draw in mind. Indeed, the fact that there are some lines where white can try to force a draw in the Berlin is obviously annoying to those people, and they probably have their own ideas for what to do about that as well. The thing is, in team matches, I think you've got a bit more leeway because, if people make a quick draw with white, their teammates tend not to be, their teammates sitting there defending with the black pieces tend not to be too delighted. So, even if somebody with a lower rating might be very happy to draw with white in other circumstances, in a team match, they're going to feel more obliged to carry on and try and win. I mean, I saw people arguing that this has sort of affected people like Ali Reza as benefited in this tournament from people trying to beat him where they would normally have been happy to try to equalise, and that sort of made his score look even more outrageously impressive. So, okay,
right.
So is that where we're at? I imagine F5 came as a slight surprise to or at least it's a very committal move. So it'd be very interesting to see what Luke can make of his attack and how white can try and punish this. But interesting stuff, actually.
Yeah. But actually, the white's queen's over on the queen side now. So maybe that does give Luke a bit more scope on the king side.
That's right. I mean, the question is whether, after a move like knight d2, then black probably needs to pay attention to the threat of taking on e4 twice because of the pin. So there will be ways in which the queen on b3 could be very useful, and it may, it may hinder the bishop on c8 from developing because, queen takes b7 is more of a possibility. Firstly, with that white pawn on a5 stops any knight a5 ideas by black, which are often a good answer to queen takes b7. And, black doesn't want that knight on c6 wandering anywhere too far away because he's created a weakness on e5. So I think the queen on b3 could work both ways, but it's it's full of life, this position.
Okay, well, we will come back to it. Let's see. What do you want to see? Gawain?
Yeah, let's see Gawain.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Ooh. Okay.
Oh my goodness, the fianchettoed queen.
Oh, this is interesting. Right, let's flip this. So Gawain's white here against Yannick Pelletier. And okay, they've only played 8 moves, but it's already a very exciting position.
Yeah, it's not 8 moves that are seen that often, I have to say. It's really interesting stuff happening already. Okay, so the advanced Caracal, which Gawain has...
I'm learning a whole load of new terms by doing this channel. It's saying it's a sex-based term. G4, white got a decent position. I'm not going to even try and work out what Tom said. G4 was played against David in this tournament, and white got a decent position. Yes. I have no idea why that would not be permitted, but maybe. Anyway, I shouldn't read these things out because I'm probably just showing what I don't know. That sounds perfectly fine to me. Anyway, I've allowed it.
Was somebody objected to that?
No, the automatic moderator said.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, it's fine. It's all fine.
Okay. Obviously controversial, but
yeah.
Okay, so the advanced Caracal. So let's go. E4, C6. E5, bishop F5. And okay, so G4 from Gawain. I mean, as Tom points out, this is sort of a move that already needs some discussion because it's part of a kind of collection of lines where white tries to cause the bishop some embarrassment on the king side and or sacrifices a pawn with e6. So, I mean, I'm used to Gawain playing h4 here.
Okay.
Would you just pop that on for the purposes of comparison? Because it's quite interesting, the differences between all these little lines. So, I mean, the first main point of h4 is that it stops black playing e6 because then g4 traps the bishop.
Yeah, because even if the bishop comes into
e4, it just gets kicked around by pawns and it gets trapped. So e6 is then not permissible for black. Black basically tends to have a choice. I mean, there are one or two sort of quirky sidelines, but essentially a choice of where to put the h pawn. And the lines which are comparable with an early g4 are probably when black just goes h6 to give the bishop a square to drop back to on h7. And then white plays something like g4. And if the bishop goes into e4, which kind of looks tempting to provoke a sort of slightly unnatural f3 move by white, The caveman Caracal. Yes, indeed. There are chessable courses on the caveman Caracal.
Ah, yes. Sacrificing the rook on a1. That's like that Kevin Winter. I think Kevin, we had a game. There was our Chess for Life channel, and Kevin showed a great game in that.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting. I mean, I think it's, as far as I remember, it's lots and lots of fun if black does take your rook on a1. The problem with most of these crazy lines is if black shows a little bit more sort of caution, then it's a fun line, and there's sort of genuine theoretical backup for it as well. You're not just kind of gambling, so it's a lot of fun. This one, the bishop goes back to h7, and then white's key idea is that once the bishop's back on h7, if black was able to play e6, then I think the position is pretty decent for black. In fact, I actually had that once against Nepo.
Oh, really?
Throw that in because it's kind of vaguely topical. White should play e6 here, and this is one of those pawn sacrifices. If black gets this wrong, then that bishop on f8 basically doesn't play the game at all.
Yeah.
And at the point I allowed this against Nepo, I had the idea that queen d6.
You were black then?
Yeah, I was black. Taking on f7, and then white plays f4 to stop queen g3 check. I had a strange notion that this was kind of okay for black, and I'd done a bit of prep, and
yeah,
I think Gawain was even present at my prep, as I recall, and sort of didn't tell me I was talking nonsense, which he might have on a better day. So I now wouldn't touch this with a barge pole for black. I think it's very, very dangerous. But these are the basic ideas. White wants to play e6. And the thing about h4, black can also play h5, and then white's argument is that black has weakened the g5 square a little bit, and white plays, an early c4, and that's all very interesting as well. But an immediate g4 on move 4 is...
Because I've seen knight c3 on move 4 and then g4 on move 5.
Knight c3 on move 4 is another thing. The difference there is that black obviously gets the chance to play e6.
Yes.
And after g4, bishop g6, h4 by white there doesn't make so much sense because black can play h5.
Yeah.
So white actually plays knight ge2. Do you want to put those on the board? Just since
otherwise
I'll have to shut up. Just again, knight c3, e6, g4, bishop g6, and now white plays knight e2.
Yeah.
So that basically any h5 that black makes to preserve the bishop in the next few moves will get by knight f4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another area. That's another whole interesting theoretical area for where g4 plays a role. The immediate g4 is really interesting. I guess that the idea. I think if black plays bishop g6, then I know that there are some games now with e6. But of course, the sacrifice of the pawn
e6 straight away.
E6 straight away, and that feels less scary because part of the justification in the other case is, of course, that once black's moved the h pawn, the g6 square is really weak,
can't they?
And there were sort of can be threats of an early queen g6 check if things go wrong for black. So this sacrifice is one way of doing it. The other way is to play h4.
Yeah.
And now the difference, as in that knight c3 line, is that black would rather play h5 than h6. So h5 here must be critical, trying to recover that f5 square. And now the incredible thing is that white does e6 anyway here.
Yeah.
So e6, now it makes more sense to the extent that the g6 square is going to be a potentially vulnerable point as well. But on the other hand, you've got options of playing bishop takes f7, so you're not going to get your king doing walkabout and that sort of thing. So there's a whole bunch of, this is relatively new stuff with g4, I think. At least it feels like it post-dates the time when I really knew a lot about all these lines. But anyway, what we get from this game is that Yannick didn't want any of it.
He did not go back to g6. He went back.
Go back to g6. He obviously regarded some version of this e6 sack as too risky, so he retreated the bishop to g7. And now we have one. I mean, these lines sort of exist as well.
I've sort of got something in my memory that black sometimes drops it all the way back to c8.
Well, I mean, that's sort of... I can see, that makes some sense because you can certainly, I mean, in this game, in a few moves' time, white's going to take the pawn on d5. So you could argue that there's a case for moving it back so you're not, that you're still protecting d5 and not getting into it. But on the other hand, d7 is not such a bad development square sometimes. If you are going to play c5, the bishop may. So, I mean, bishop d7 is probably the move you test to see if it works first before you decided to go back to c8. Now, the interesting thing here is that, after h4, h6, there's also a line where black goes g4, bishop d7 anyway to avoid the e6 sacks. And I'm kind of tempted to think that, well, then you have to weigh up whether h4 or h6 is a more useful move when comparing that system. And, if there's a case for saying h6 looks a bit odd if you're going to move your bishop to d7 anyway. But I had a discussion like this with a boy at school yesterday who was actually discussing this opening. Incredibly similar to this. He said, how come you play h6 and then move your bishop back to d7 anyway? And it kind of does look quite odd. And it's one of those questions. And the answer really is that black doesn't have a good waiting move. And if white doesn't go g4, he's probably going to put it back on h7. But that's a pretty unsatisfactory answer. It's one of those things you find yourself in the middle of the sentence and you think, if I was hearing this, I wouldn't be very impressed. So I don't know. It's a very interesting line, but g4 immediately feels to me very committal. But on the other hand, it's relatively fresh territory, which these days is regarded very often as a big plus, almost regardless of the finer points of its merits. So knight c3, Gawain played.
Yeah. And so already on move 5, black has a bit of a think.
Well, yes, what black does now is quite radical, because clearly you can, what he's trying to do is to use that, not to play e6 too quick. If you play e6, you end up with something a bit like a sort of advanced French, except that white's knight on c3 is, well, he didn't have to put it there, so he's going to find some use for it. But white gains a lot of space on the king side usually, and black's lost tempi with the bishop. But it's, black has counterplay as well. That's possible, but c5 is much more ambitious, I think. Black's trying to make this break in the center without actually having to make the e6 move necessarily.
Kevin's asking if you think Gawain's bringing out his coffee house repertoire here.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's a thought. It certainly could be. Certainly could be.
But sometimes you're in that mood, aren't you, of playing something a bit like
this?
This?
It's not. Tom knows better. Okay.
Not. Okay. So black plays c5.
Black plays c5, which is obviously very ambitious. And this doesn't necessarily commit him to sacrificing a bunch of pawns. White takes on c5 because otherwise his center is getting kind of undermined. Perhaps worth mentioning that knight takes d5, bishop c6 looks fairly embarrassing for white. And
you don't want to do that. You really don't.
You want to do that. Yeah. So that's one point just worth a mention. D takes c5, and at that point it's not too late for black, if he wants to play more solidly, to play e6. And I think he will at some point win back the c5 pawn or the e5 pawn. There are similar lines to this in the similar position with h4, h6 on the board. And, you'd need to analyze in some detail to see who benefits from all these little nuances. Although I tend to think h4 could be a useful move for white. But what black does here, he doesn't bother to defend his d5 pawn. He just gets on with attacking white's center. And it's interesting to me because this is a very sharp way of playing for black. But as far as I recall, he spent quite a lot of time doing it. So it doesn't feel to me like it was... Oh, sorry, knight c6 he didn't spend very long on. Maybe he spent his time on c5 originally. Okay, maybe black's got this all kind of covered.
Maybe, yeah. Okay, so Gawain takes the pawn.
Takes the pawn on d5. And I must admit here, I thought black was probably intending to go e6, force white's queen to e4, and then take on c5 and just have some compensation. But I wasn't that convinced by the compensation. Black's ahead in minor piece development. White's position potentially is full of some holes. And the e5 pawn will still need a bit of defending. But I'd be surprised if this added up to a full pawn's worth. Maybe it does.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Bishop takes g4, on the other hand, is a whole different way of playing the position. And certainly a better explanation of why black wanted to play c5 without playing e6 first, because now he's got this extra possibility of the bishop looking quite active. Knowing Gawain, I would expect this position to be, even if he hasn't prepared it for today, to be something he's
familiar
at some point. I think Gawain's pretty thorough, very, very serious in his opening analysis, very willing to explore new ideas, and all that sort of thing. So I would imagine this features, but he's nonetheless. I mean, it could be that the length of time he's thinking, for example, about his next move is just compatible. You've looked at the position, but when you get to the board, sometimes it looks different, and you just want to check lines, that sort of thing. So a 9-10 minute think isn't particularly radical, but it's not. It's also not kind of banging out your preparation for effect either. So interesting. Bishop G4. So what's happening here?
Yeah. What is happening? Because where's White's king going? In the end,
I mean, I guess that White's king is probably, you deal with the bishop on G4 and you want to go queenside probably.
Yeah.
But to go queenside, you obviously have to put a piece in the way of
bishop D2. Actually, it's probably quite nice to go queenside, isn't it? And then
I think it's quite nice to go queenside if you can. I don't think the extra. Oh, also the G file. I mean, the G file is an attacking resource for White.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I mean, one thing Bishop G2 does do from Black's perspective is regain control of the F5 square, which is something, which is pretty nice to do when you're playing the black side of the advanced variation. I always feel more comfortable as Black when the F5 square has been recovered in these G4 systems, but this is a fairly radical way of doing it, and White's got a lot of attacking resources here. I'm not quite sure what are White's candidate moves here. Queen G2 is a very interesting move, just because you don't see fianchettoed queens on move 8 that often.
Yeah, but you might think about just dropping back with Queen E4 or something like that. I can't quite. I suppose it's whether you want your queen further forward or further.
Well, I just off the cuff, I'm wondering whether if you play Queen E4, I'm wondering whether the knight coming to D4 is a good thing for Black, and therefore whether you might consider a move like Queen D4 against Queen E4. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It's not even.
Yeah. So here might be the thing.
It may be. There's if that knight starts getting too ambitious, it's got to keep a little eye on Bishop B5 check for White at some points. But Queen D4 feels kind of logical to me.
Yeah.
But it's such an odd, unusual position. You need a little bit of time to even figure which side is going to benefit from the exchange of queens and that sort of thing. These things are not so obvious. So one idea here for White will be to play Bishop B5 as he's about to do, without allowing the exchange of queens, I guess.
Yeah.
I think White's a pawn up, but I think that his pawns are vulnerable enough that his advantage wouldn't have carried over very well into a kind of exchange of queen situation.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want to take on D8.
I don't think taking on D8 was seriously on his agenda.
No.
I expect the questions were whether to develop perhaps the bishop on F1 already, or whether... Okay, then that allows the exchange of queens, but under slightly different circumstances. I suspect he wanted to keep queens on, so Queen G2 makes sense. Queen E4 was probably considered.
Yeah.
So, Black... You could ask where that bishop's going, but Black didn't move the bishop. Of course, one thing with Queen D7, it's efficient in that it prepares to castle queenside. On the other hand, to complete his development, Black wants to move E6, and he doesn't have it yet because the queen is needed to defend the bishop. So Black needs to work out, still needs to work out how he's going to sort of more generally solve the problem of the G4 bishop in order to try and develop the rest of his pieces. But he can now castle queenside if he wants to as well. In advance of White doing so. White played Bishop B5, which makes sense to me. That looked like it was part of the point of Queen G2. Black castles long, probably just worth pointing out that he castles long, threatening mate.
Ooh, yes.
Because again, you don't get to threaten mate on move 9 that often as Black.
That. In
the advanced camo, and that is a serious threat. Well worth a moment of White's time. So White could deal with it by almost
pretty much any developing move.
Almost any developing move deals with the threat. So Bishop E3 feels like a candidate. Knight E2 is the move he played. So by definition, a candidate. I'm just thinking. I assume Black doesn't want to take that. But it's not completely self-evident to me that that's a ridiculous move, because it solves some of his problems in one go. I mean...
Oh, Look, takes. If you take back with the knight, which I was about
to take back with the knight, which is really
still got the checkmate.
Still got the mate. If you take back with the king, there's a fork on d4. So the only move is bishop takes e2.
Take back with the bishop.
And then black could, for example, take the pawn on e5, or could then play e6 without having to worry about the bishop being gone. I don't think black's about to do this, but it's it's on the table, and it's one of the reasons I had thought that perhaps bishop e3 was a more likely move than knight e2.
Yeah. Okay. So knight e2. So he could potentially take that, and
he could take that. That's one option. This is still the current position, isn't it?
This is the current position.
Yeah. Right. I mean, he's more likely to take that for the simple reason that he needs complete development, and that's one way to do it, because otherwise e6 is not possible. So if he doesn't do that, he needs to work out what he's doing with that bishop on g4. Is he going to f5, for example, hitting c2? Yeah. He can do that, but then I then feel that things like bishop e3 and knight d4 coming for white, that looks quite quick to me. I'm not sure I hugely like that for black. So the more I look at it, the more I wonder whether bishop takes e2 might actually.
You don't have to. You could go. So bishop takes e2. You could take on c6, maybe.
You could. That's true. That's a thought, actually, because that may well be what he's intending. Because bishop takes feels quite awkward. That's probably a better move, yeah. And then you will be able to play king to, and obviously there's no mate here because the bishop on e2 is hanging.
Yeah,
that'd be one way to lose all your pieces. Yeah, you're probably right there, Natasha. I think bishop takes c6 is more sensible. Okay, and probably a decent reason for black not to do it, because then a white rook will come to d1 very quickly. I mean, I must say, I rather like how Gawain's done this, I think.
Yeah.
I can't see a very convenient way for black to get the rest of his pieces out, and that's, again, quite a promising state of affairs on move 10. So.
Okay,
let's move on for now.
David.
Yeah. Anyway, an original and quite exciting position.
Yeah. All right, David, which is our second Berlin of the day.
This is our second Berlin. I think we might sort of go relatively quickly with this one. Although, we'll see. Let's see quickly how we got here. So, as I said, the two ways of avoiding the ending. One is to castle and play rook e1. The other is what happened here and what we saw the other day, playing d3 just to defend the e-pawn. And then it's, it looks much more like other openings. It looks more like closed lines of the Spanish. It looks more like some kind of Italian gioco piano type game. Bishop c5 is the main line here, and now I quite like White's approach here, because it's a pretty common approach. I mean, I think Luke and David, I would imagine, Luke certainly has played both colours of the position that happens after bishop takes c6. I wouldn't be surprised if David has at some point as well. White has a lot of different ways of playing this position. You can try to play, for example, bishop e3, showing that, you say, okay, you've doubled black's pawns. Black's got the bishop pair, but you immediately would like to exchange one of them off. And if it exchanges on f3, giving white double pawns in turn, those double pawns control quite a lot of center squares and sort of can help white to develop a little bit of light initiative on the king side. I mean, all these lines are pretty safe for black. White is trying to make sort of progress at the margins, but this is a relatively interesting way of doing it. I don't think black tends to take on e3, so that's one possibility. Other things, white can castle immediately. White can fiddle around with the minor pieces. Luke's very good, I think, at manoeuvring in these kind of positions with white. But he also seems quite happy playing the black side as well. What white does here is much more direct, and I think rather interesting. He tries to play for d4 very quickly. So castles, I mean, one thing which is useful for white having taken on c6, as in most positions, you're not threatening to take on e5 immediately, but you are creating a threat of taking on e5 as soon as you've castled. So black has to deal with knight takes e5, so has to make one or two unnatural moves here. That's the same as in the delayed exchange Spanish, basically. They're quite closely related. So knight d7 is a logical way of doing that.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's a slight, a move backwards and not a developing move can give white the idea of some ambition in the centre. And what he does here is one attempt. Actually, I think it's a relatively fashionable attempt recently to try and exploit this to play c3. So, like I said the other day, another example of the old John Watson thing of giving up. You give up the bishop pair, but then you open the position because opening the position is part of your compensation for it.
Yep.
So that old, the old sort of stereotype about you have the bishop pair, therefore you open the position. Again, not true in this case. It's white who's trying to open the position to make something, to make some
leading development,
make some playing with the knight pair. Yeah. So that's quite fun. H6 requires a little bit of explanation. I think the point is that if black castles instead, then if black castles instead, I believe that d4, bishop d6. Partly black doesn't want to exchange too quickly because he doesn't want to allow white's knight a square on c3. He'd rather it went to a less natural square. But in this position, I think bishop g5 is a little bit annoying because although, playing f6 isn't the end of the world, it's a slight weakness which black would rather avoid. I mean, the f6 is a much more respectable move in these lines than it is in most e4, e5 openings. It's usually a catastrophe. But once white's light square bishop is exchanged, it's not such a bad thing. But it's still, I think white has been showing after bishop h4 some signs of getting a little bit of initiative here. And so h6 is a kind of super refinement to prevent white from even getting that.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes sense. I think there've been a few games with h6, I think. And now d4. And again, the same argument as before. If black takes, white takes with the pawn, and knight c3 becomes an option. Again, it's nothing too drastic, but it's a freer, more pleasant development than black needs to allow white. So black just drops back with bishop d6. And now it's probably worth mentioning that, okay, the first thing is if white takes twice on e5, so d takes, knight takes, and so on. Two things to say. One is that black, by virtue of his opening, has already shown that he's quite happy to play a position where his king's had to move, but he has. I mean, this is slightly more Berlin ending-y type scenario, but I think it's quite a good one for black, actually, because I think if white starts getting ambitious with f4 or something, then his e-pawn's going to be a little bit vulnerable. And if white plays e5, then it opens up a whole load of white squares for white's square bishop. So I think this is quite a decent one. So I don't think black needs to worry about this. So consequently, h6 is what David played is very logical. But okay, so white now just carries on with development, wants to put the knight on c4 to create some more pressure. Black castles. And after knight c4, this black has been trying to hold this e5 point, but you can see that after knight c4, it's putting more pressure on. It's getting harder and harder to hold that e5 square. So at this point, black takes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But now this knight's out, so you're not so worried about.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
exactly. The knight is. I mean, c4 is not a bad square, but it's also given black an extra development move. So yes, and now rook e8. Now I think it's worth mentioning because when I first saw this position, for a moment I thought maybe white can take and play knight f5. So take on d6 and play knight f5, which, first, I mean, I get sort of excited by knights on f5 in general, but I don't think this one is really doing the business. I think the point which is worth mentioning here is that positions where white just gets a bishop against a knight with this structure are not very promising for him at all, because that knight has sort of happy squares it can sit on, and maybe even sort of, lightly try and go to some white squares which aren't very well defended by white. So rook takes e4 would be the answer.
Yeah, okay.
And I think knight takes d6, rook e6 is absolutely fine for black. I don't think knight takes c8 is something black needs to worry about at all. I think black's very comfortably equal here, actually.
Yeah, looks fine.
Does that look fine? Yeah, I think that looks fine anyway, but I just kind of think black's active and has basically solved all his problems. But it's it's worth noting because otherwise takes and knight f5 might be irritating. There's no way of avoiding this.
Yeah.
Kasparov quote about a knight on f5.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember, but
what is it? Checkmate.
Probably involved mate. I mean, when you're attacking on the king side, there's nothing quite like a knight on f5. And I get a little bit as white. I think I get over nervous about knights landing on f4 as well. I'm sure that was one of my problems playing against sort of moderns and Pietzes sometimes, is I get a bit sort of nervous when the knight lands on f4 because I've seen nasty things happen too often. Okay, so this is basically fine. So white just plays rook e1. It's a good idea with white in this position, just to sort of... White always has the option of taking back the bishop pair if he needs to until that one moves, and he just has, some reasonable squares at the moment. But David's next move, what did David play here? He played 95. Okay. Another move I might consider, knight b6 might have been worth considering as well. I don't know. Perhaps white has a good square for his knight after knight b6. I mean, I would absolutely love it if white took on b6 and we could take with the a pawn.
What about if you took on d6?
That might be more of an issue. I just wanted to show that pawn formation. With the pawn.
Yes.
I love
look at this. Yes, a little square of pawns.
That little square of pawns, I just love that. I mean, I'd take a serious disadvantage to get one of those. So yeah, actually, I think black's doing fine here. I think they're really quite a... I mean, it seems odd because they're on the majority side, and if you're going to try and create a passed pawn, I guess the square of pawns...
They're not going to be very quick to move up the board, are they?
Yeah, no, they're not. But I think that nonetheless, you could play. White's knight isn't going to have wonderful squares. They can move up the board in their own time. The A file, I think, is very useful. I might be wrong. In this case, they may not be that great, but in general, all these kinds of squares of pawns. Somebody had one earlier in this tournament. Was it Luke? I think had a square of pawn or something similar, which I really kind of envied.
Very nice.
So yeah, so 95 may actually be more rational. So okay, but there's a couple of questions here. One is, I was going to say one is if white takes on d6 and plays f4. I suppose there must be an argument that, again, white's in danger of weakening some white squares if he plays too ambitiously. Don't forget, now we've got opposite colour bishops, so it's kind of always... it's not just that we've exchanged a pair of minor pieces and got back to a sort of dull knight and bishop versus knight and bishop. The opposite colour bishops always adds a little... I mean, in endgames, it may just add a further drawish element, but in a middle game, it could add a lot of spice to the position sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. F4 feels wrong, actually, because you're kind of blocking in... I don't know if you're blocking in your
own bishop.
Your own bishop. Knight g4 to f6 might be a very decent way of dealing with that, actually. It feels like a sensible square to land your knight on, because white, something like e5 by white would be very committal. So, no, after h3, knight f6, I mean, but I think this looks fine for black.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always a danger you're just blocking in your own bishop. So bishop f4.
Yeah, bishop f4. And knight back to g6. Bishop back. And d5.
And d5, okay. So
I wasn't expecting to play it because I was thinking this pawn was kind of reducing the scope of that bishop.
Well, that's definitely one of two ways of looking at that. You could look at the pawn as a target of that bishop, couldn't you? It's like,
like the knight coming into f5 and then this pawn on d6 suddenly undefended.
Well, I don't even know if it needs to go to f5. I mean, if I get the chance to move my knight somewhere, even somewhere like b3 or c2, you actually need to find a way to defend d6.
Yeah.
And you could play knight e5, but you've just been there. And if you play d5 then you are... Well, I mean, you actually need to find a good waiting move now as well that would enable you to play d5 as a response. I mean, if you look at the development of black's bishop, it's so many chess openings. Developing that bishop on c8 is the main challenge anyway. And here too, it doesn't have anywhere to go right now. It can't go to d7 because the d6 pawn hangs. So...
Okay, you've convinced me.
I'm not sure what else. But, this is not...
To try and get...
It's not a trivial thing, because this is, it's simplifying the pawn structure still further. We're going to get another of those centres with no pawns, but it is giving white a queen e8 check. So black does need to be quite careful that queen e8 check isn't going to be meaningful. You see what I mean?
Queen e8 check.
I mean, sorry, it gives a queen e8 check unless either it gives a queen e8 check, so pawn takes pawn, then black needs to play rook takes e1 in order to be able to take with the queen, as in the game. The alternative is to play the queen pawn, but I don't think there's enough. I mean, I think the isolated queen pawn positions, white's minor pieces are just better than black's as well, so it doesn't look much fun.
Yes, this has actually all happened. So
yeah, this is what happened. Well, I think after d5, I think it's the only way of challenging black's setup. Otherwise, I don't think black has any problem. Okay, the first thing to note here, and I would be pretty confident that David's opponent did note it, is that bishop h3 is a threat.
Yes, very nice.
A discovered attack against the queen and the threat of mate, and a pretty major embarrassment, really.
Fork of checkmate and the queen, so that's a good one.
Well, I mean, if I've just talked about solving the problem of the development of the sea, that's not a bad way of doing it. But okay, white, sadly for England, but probably good for chess, was onto that one. So now played f3, which clearly stops that threat by blocking the diagonal. Now, I guess the natural way for black to try and play is to do something whereby what he would like to do if he could is go something like c5 and b6 and then develop the bishop onto a... Well, I mean, it's not a great diagonal with the pawn on f3, but it's perfectly respectable, and that helps solve... I mean, the problem black has is developing that bishop without losing the rook and before white can show some initiative. And it's not obvious to me that this is a trivial problem. I mean, I'm sort of... My inclination is to slightly prefer white here.
It's always going to take 3 moves, isn't it? Because you can't just go b6. You've got to do c5 as well. Yeah,
and the other problem is that you have to... I think you can't play c5 because knight b5 threatens a fork and is actually really hard to meet.
Oh, so how do you even do it?
I don't think you can do it now. That's what you'd like to do, but you can't do it, is what I was about to say. So I think that explains David's next move. a6 is simply a preparation.
What you could do instead, if you wanted to do it different, you could maybe bring your queen back here.
You could. I'm just not quite sure after white plays. I guess white might play rook e1, and then I guess you're going to be presented with the similar problem.
Same problem.
Same problem, different piece sort of thing.
Yeah, fair enough.
Possibly a worse problem as well, because actually without the queen on d5, knight f5 comes into the equation as a way to exploit the queen as well, and I suspect that's actually a real problem.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I think the queen is needed to cover f5, and so the way David's trying to do it with a6 and c5 makes perfect sense.
Yes, okay. All right, so the
c5 is sort of like
c5, b6, bishop b7.
Yeah. Oh, Tom's slightly...
yes, Tom's saying the same. A6 threatens
saying
c5.
the same, which is reassuring.
And then h4 for white, Tom is saying.
Well, he even said the same assessment that, I think white is a little bit better, but a6 and then c5 is clearly what black needs to do.
Yeah, because it's like black's got these kind of 3 or 4 moves that he's pretty much going to do, so white's got a few moves to try and...
it feels like Tom's one step ahead of me here because he's obviously seen more of these positions than I have. If h4 is an as usual, I mean, yes, I can see that in many of these positions it is, but the queen on d5 stops h5, so I don't know whether it's how easy it's going to be to sort of use h4 here. H4 is a very useful move if black needs to take measures to stop h5, but the queen's already doing it. I suspect white might want to direct whatever he does next more. No, h4 is a good... Oh, well, and Natasha, this is back to you and Alpha Zero again, isn't it?
I know.
H4 is just a good move everywhere.
H4 is the move.
It's the move.
Yeah. Well, it does look nice, because like, say you were able to get h5 in if things happen, then that knight really doesn't have any squares except for h8.
No, that's true. It really, that is absolutely true. But I think, that queen on d5 is not easy to shift because you can never kick it away with the pawn because the pawn's needed to guard the knight, and you can't really play rook d1 with a view to doing something with it because the knight's then pinned.
Yep.
I think that queen is there for a while, and so white needs to find a way of making progress before black gets this c5 thing in. I mean, after c5, still I'm sort of happy with white's position, but I think black's on the way to solving the most serious problems then. Is this the current position?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to
Ravi,
because that was also a very interesting opening.
All righty.
And
Ravi.
Wow.
I'm going to just flip this.
Sicilians are a funny business these days, aren't they? You wouldn't have got this out of a Sicilian 40 years ago.
Here we go. So, Sicilian Defense.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, this is a line, I guess, partly for people who like the Rossolimo attack for white. I mean, Ravi's written a book, hasn't he? I think, which covers the
Tom's saying Ravi's game is in the coffee house repertoire.
Ah, that may well be. He's written a book on I believe, on anti-Sicilians like the Rossolimo and the Moscow variation.
Okay.
I think that's right. And this is a way of trying to turn 2e6 into a Rossolimo attack. So against 2 knight c6, he would presumably play bishop b5. But against e6, he goes knight c3 with a view to meeting knight c6 with bishop b5. And, some players won't allow that, but some people will need knight c6 for their repertoire. Whoa. I'm going to make a claim on this. Let's get there in a moment. I mentioned knight e5 to Richard Palliser in about 2010. Okay, let's get to that position first. So bishop b5 and black plays knight d4, which is clearly a critical line. And there are some positions where white is happy to allow knight takes b5, and this is one of them. Knight takes b5 actually gives white quite quick development for the bishop pair. So the best move here, I'm pretty sure, is a6.
Yeah.
And now white plays bishop d3, which again...
this is one that always looks a bit odd to me.
Well, there's so many of these days, aren't there? There's so many openings which 30 years ago the coaches would have just said, no, you can't possibly play like that. It looks like beginner's chess. But actually the bishop on d3 has some real points. So now in this position, white is threatening to take on d4 and play knight e2. And it's all so black could take on f3, and that's a whole other set of theory. But one very interesting way to do it is just to play knight back to c6. Because, why shouldn't black move his pieces backwards and forwards when white is doing the same with his bishop and putting it on what looks like a really clumsy square like d3? And actually, if white plays bishop e2 now, it leads back, I think, into some... and then follows it with d4. It leads back without any tempo difference into some normal Sicilian.
Okay.
So that's one. But if white tries to avoid that, for example, if white instead of bishop e2 plays rook e1.
Sorry, wait a minute.
Again,
rook e1 here.
Again, motivate. Oh, black goes knight d4. Okay, motivated by the same religious argument I had earlier that the bishop really belongs back where it was put at the beginning, and black's main line here is to play g5.
Oh, here, g5.
Yeah, here, g5.
Is it really? Here we
go. Because the rook is stopping the knight from retreating to e1. So g5 actually threatens to win it with g4. And I make no claim about this, but I do know that the most successful move for white in this position in terms of percentages to go back to f1 again with the rook, which just shows what a load of complete nonsense it is to look at percentages. So this is a very interesting line, and I sort of looked at this 10 years ago. No, you can't tell your pieces, you can't tell your pupils any general principles these days because they're all being broken by, you just have to try to get them not to play the bong cloud or something. Anyway, so instead of rook e1, Ravi has played the very interesting move knight d5. And I think I really am going to put in a play.
Is this a...
This has been played before, but this is literally the move which I thought of 10 years ago and had in my notes and was planning to put in a dangerous weapons book.
Oh.
So I discussed it with Richard Palliser, who kind of... we kind of like the idea. The point is that if black takes the knight, we can go... Yeah, I did analyse g5. That was one of the things that put me off it. But, okay, so if black takes the knight... white's clearly threatening to win back a piece. Black has to go, presumably, knight e7. And then the point is that it's not a real piece sack. We're going to go d6, and we're going to win the piece back with rook e1 check. So the whole thing is just a pseudo piece sack, which kind of, cleans up white's position quite nicely if black takes it.
Yeah.
But black isn't obliged to take it. And then, the idea I had basically was that this knight could sit happily on e3, where on the one hand, I wanted to stop these funny g5, g4 ideas, so I thought knight e3 might help with that. But the main point was really to play c3, bishop c2, and d4. So it was a way of...
This move you've known about for years.
I found it, and I mentioned it, but I mean, obviously other people have independently found it as well. I mentioned it to Richard Palliser, and he quite liked it, but he's very polite. You know.
Did you ever? Did you ever get a chance? Did you ever? You never got a chance to play it.
I think it's more like I thought it was a nice idea, but I wasn't actually very convinced. I didn't get a chance to play it, but I can't say I was going all out for a chance to play it either.
Yeah, and Richard Palliser nodded politely and said, "Very clever."
Well, I think he thought it was quite neat because it sort of it does some things that White would like to do. You've got to make sense of that bishop on d3, and as Tom rightly points out, if you go bishop e2, aside from the fact that your whole opening suggests you might not wanted to play a open Sicilian at all, Black can play knight d4 yet again. And I mean, that really does start to look like chess between a couple of beginners, doesn't it? If the player goes bishop b5 to d3 to e2, and Black goes knight c6 to d4 back to c6 again. I mean, what are observers meant to make of all this nonsense? But actually, there's a sort of underlying logic. Yeah, I quite like... I mean, I can see why. I'm quite pleased that I found this move, but no one has to believe me anyway, because I never demonstrated I'd found it. So.
But how did it find its way into Ravi's repertoire, then?
Well, he found it independently. I mean, I don't think it's impossible to find. I don't think it's... As far as I remember, it's not the engine's top choice, but the engine is not oblivious of it. So, yeah, I think it's out there. And it's been played 3 times.
Okay.
And Ravi is a very hard-working young man who's more than capable of... finding his own opening.
Yeah. I'm just imagining.
And these books he's written I haven't actually read it yet, but I've just got an idea of the scale of it. These are fantastic theoretical tomes he's coming out with. And I just know, I got to see the quality of Ravi's work as a coach with Shreyas, actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's serious stuff he was doing. He's for somebody who's also, he's not a chess professional. The amount of work he's putting in is really impressive, I think.
Wow. So if he got a chance to do like a year as a chess professional, imagine how strong he'd get.
Well, I guess, although some people have had that kind of idea and then found
harder going than you'd think.
But when you do all that extra work, it doesn't immediately translate into extra success. Otherwise, more people would be working as hard as that.
Yeah.
I said, do I keep a database of open ideas?
G5 here.
I just want to answer Kevin Winter.
Okay,
the answer is
Kevin.
Yes, I do, but that makes it sound more organised than it is. So yes, but it might be a scramble to go find this one. But this one was very much an idea found as much with a book in mind as my own playing in mind.
Yeah.
I keep a database these days of non-opening ideas, middle game ideas as well, and end game ideas. I mean, I sort of try to have some stuff out there in case I start writing things again. Okay, so anyway, it's an interesting move. It's obviously a very interesting move. And yes, Tom is right. G5 is another very interesting
So this one here. So what's this all about? Try and go G4.
Ideas, same sort of ideas as. Yeah, I can't remember the details of this. I mean, one way to do it is to play knight e3, but then I guess Black just renews the threat of g4 with h5 or something. And
I'm saying quite possible he's discussed it with Coin. Yeah, I was imagining these scenes of discussing, at the English dinner table, or discussing their knight d5s and. But I imagine it didn't. It wasn't like that.
When did you last go to one of these things?
Ages ago.
Exactly. Yeah, these theoretical.
I tell you what, the one I went, my first one in 92.
Yeah.
And of course, we didn't take computers along at that point, and we take books. So I was very pleased because Nigel Short wanted to borrow my book because he hadn't brought it. It was a what was it? It was a where they do it must. Caro-Kann, I think, and then you go C5. And so I had a book that was on that, and he was playing against, I can't remember who he was playing next, but he wanted to borrow my book, so I was like, I've helped Nigel Short do his opening prep.
Well, Tony Miles once borrowed my semi-Slav book, but apparently it was just to prop up a very unpleasantly wobbling table.
I think
pretty thick book, but that was a bit cheeky. Anyway, so he didn't go G5. G5 is obviously an interesting reply. But of course, the knight on F3 isn't threatened with being lost here because it does have a square on E1. But black is claiming quite a lot of space on the king side with g4. Okay, what did the guy went bishop d6? Yeah, which
yes, quite quickly actually. So he
I mean, as I say, I think knight d5. I don't know how many games knight d5 has been played in, but I think there were a few now. It's not the sort of radical thing that it might have been a few years ago. Okay, and now of course black is threatening to take the piece.
Talking about g5.
Yeah.
I played an in-person game with Michael Basman the other week.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes. He did an h6 and g5 against me.
Yes, he's...
Right. Bishop d6. Okay. So now they've both got their bishops blocking in their d pawn.
Well, as I said... but I mean, there is a logic to all this, but it's not a at first sight logic, is it really?
Yeah.
So the knight comes back to e3, which was kind of its destination anyway. So I don't know if black's intending to play the position with d5. He needs to do something. He must be, I think, to make sense of that bishop on c7. Black is going to try and play d5, which is an interesting approach, which I can't say I've seen before. I can't remember if I thought about this at the time. I think I thought there were other reasonable things black could do as well. It would be interesting to know if this line is in any way in any of Ravi's books.
Yeah, because this one, the guy did have a long thing.
That's interesting, because it kind of, after bishop d6, I don't know what else.
Yeah, knight e3 is kind of...
I mean, I don't know, mate. You could consider that a decent diagonal for your bishop anyway and do something with b5, but it seems to me that knight ge7 and d5 is the most obviously logical way of handling this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Ravi carries on with this.
Carries on with the plan. I mean, I think it's difficult to find an alternative plan to develop really here for white. c3, bishop c2, and so on makes the most sense. And black played d5 immediately. And yeah, I think white needs to take that probably.
Takes. And rook e1.
Right. So, okay, black's in the relatively happy position that the move he has to make to stop the discovered check is the development he wanted to make anyway. So, yep. Knight to e7.
Okay. And now I didn't predict this one either. b4.
No, that's a very interesting move as well. Well, I mean, it may be that moves by the bishop could already be met by d4 for black. Yeah. In which case, it may be that white needs to do something different from that in order to justify the position of his bishop on d3. I mean, I'm sort of, again, nothing about this position is very much at first sight. But at first sight, I kind of have some time for black's setup here. It makes some sense to me. But I didn't really expect c4 to be part of it. Sorry, is that c4? b4.
Yeah, what if black does take this pawn?
Well, yeah, I must admit I had sort of, that was
something to think about, isn't it? So you'd presumably take back.
Yes, you take back, I think. Well, Tom says that you play bishop b1 and bishop b2. So...
and just line your bishops up.
A good old-fashioned lining.
I was doing arrows. I'd do big, long arrows over to the king's side.
Yes. I assume there must be some good reason that black can't even consider d4 here. But
d4. You could put your knight in on f5.
You could. You kind of could have done that anyway. It doesn't feel like... Oh, the computer really doesn't like that. Oh, what am I allowing?
Computer's all over the place.
Yeah, well, so am I. I'm a little...
What, like queen a4 check, maybe?
Well, then I think knight bc6 looks okay, and you haven't really gained a... I mean, I kind of wondered about knight c2, and then if knight takes, queen takes, and you've stopped castling for fairly clear reasons, but it's only one thought. And now, you're probably threatening bishop a3 as well. Yeah. But knight c2 probably allowed knight d3. Sorry, that's a bit careless. Yeah. Sorry, I was missing that for a moment. Yeah, that doesn't look very clever. I don't want to allow that. So it's not totally obvious to me. Maybe you can play bishop a3 now.
Ooh.
Maybe just bishop a3, I think. I was trying to not to allow black to... I don't really want black to take on f2, but... No, black has bishop d6 at the end. That doesn't make sense either. It's not terribly obvious to me why black can't play d4. Well, you can check your knight f5. I mean, that might be the move. That might be the move. F5. The engine likes it better than anything else. I mean, white. I didn't sense that white wanted to play knight f5 before, but it does make more sense here now that we've moved that black pawn onto a dark square, and maybe after bishop takes f5, bishop takes, we just have a lot of white squares and can put the bishop back on e4 and then play the other bishop to a3. Maybe that's just quite decent compensation. That wouldn't be... It's also possible that if black castles here, we might be close to Greek gift territory. I mean... Oh,
yeah, we'd have to do that.
Sure, we have to look at that. I'm not sure, though. I'm not very convinced. There might be a king g6. Shall we just show that king g8? I think queen h5 there's absolutely terminal. Because queen h5 is the end, and black's got all the wrong minor pieces. There's no bishop f5. There's no knight f6.
There's one's game over.
That is game over. But
he maybe goes this way.
Well, he goes that way partly because we don't even have the knight and the c1 bishop connected yet. There's not even a d pawn move on the board. So, and queen g4 can probably be met by f5. In fact, I'm pretty sure it can. That doesn't look like a very good move. h4 is possible, but h4 is less plausible when the knight is hanging against h5 check. So I don't really... No, I think this probably isn't Greek gift territory, but it will only take one more move by white to turn it into Greek. So black will have to keep that in mind, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's not totally obvious to me how big this conversation is, but it's clear that there is some conversation, just bishop e4 or something.
Yeah.
You have the bishop pair, you have some white squares, you have some attempts to find a Greek gift. I mean, there's definitely some play. I didn't really think about black taking. I was more concerned that I didn't quite understand. But what? So not pawn takes. If he takes, knight takes, bishop b1, and then doesn't play d4. Tom said that bishop b2 then is very dangerous, which is really interesting. Again, I don't think that's obviously true at first sight either.
So what if just like castles or something?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, it does still feel right to me to play d4 before white can go bishop b2, but castles, bishop b2, and then, what did he say? Then checkmates the castled king.
Yeah, then you've got your Greek gift coming in.
He didn't even add the words at the risk of slightly oversimplifying. He just got on with it.
It's just checkmate, yeah.
That's just checkmate. Anyone watching who's wondering why that's just checkmate, we have that in common, but I can see that there's a reasonably dangerous attack brewing, yeah. It's not very easy for black to connect his two bishops. Yeah, it's not very easy for black to connect his two bishops with the king side. That's
what he meant by checkmate was
easy 1-0, he says.
The bishop on c8 has no squares.
Yeah, that's almost synonymous with checkmate, but it could be. I mean, you don't really want both bishops on the other side of the board and both white's bishops firing at the king side. I can see why that's in principle quite dangerous. You know.
It does look nice.
It is the kind of checkmate where the engine still gives slightly better for black, but I'm inclined to believe Tom more than the engine. So On this occasion, I hasten to add. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And
so Black bottled it and didn't take the
pawn.
What
about bottling it? I mean, I wasn't sure that c5 was a move he really wanted to play anyway. I mean, I'd be surprised if his only choices here are taking the pawn or playing c4. I can see that he, for example, doesn't really play b6 or something, but I wonder if there's some way of playing d4 in the position without taking the b pawn, which was worth considering. But okay, let's move on because we're in danger.
Like just d4 now.
We're in danger of neglecting all the other game. Well, possibly. Although there is knight f5 again in that position, and every time you've played d4, I suppose that Alaska versus Bow. Yeah, certainly there are White's bishops are sort of tilting in the right direction, aren't they? Okay, let's move on because after c4, there's interesting things going on as well.
c4.
Bishop c2.
2 castles.
Yep.
So, do we have a Greek gift here? We presumably don't. Oh, now this bishop's open.
Well, but the knight's covering f5 as well.
Yeah, so it's much worse.
Interesting comment. He's shocked that neither player went d4 on move 14. So White gets first shot at it and Black gets second shot at it. But okay, let's see for a moment. So yeah, I suspect there's not a Greek gift here for the same reason that you're nowhere near defending that knight on g5. So king g6 is going to be fine. I mean, king h6 might even be fine with that diagonal close, but no, king g6 makes much more sense. Okay, so
Tom's suggesting d4 here.
He is. I was also wondering about a4 perhaps, but d4 also makes some sense. Okay, so d4. How's Black going to develop the pieces? I mean, it doesn't look obvious to me that Black's in such a bad way if he plays something like h6 followed by bishop e6, queen d7, and try and put something on f5. Something that doesn't seem to me. Bishop e6 is met by knight g5, but I'm not sure after h6 that White's doing anything so devastating on the king side. I mean, White can do some perhaps slightly annoying things on the queen side, a4, bishop a3. I mean, I'm not worried that White can't develop his pieces. I quite like White's position, I think, now, but I don't think Black's in sort of dire trouble there either. I think I'm more knight h4. Okay, that's an interesting idea.
Instead of a4. Yeah,
probably instead of a4. Yeah, it's just mate apparently.
Mate again. This is good.
Well, this is obviously a more convincing mate because the engine gives a slight advantage rather than a slight disadvantage. But okay, maybe. If it is mate again, then you see. I mean, the argument is clearly that the bishop on c7 is just on the wrong square for defending the king side.
Because we could go queen h5, couldn't we, and then put a knight in on f5. That could be mate.
So if we play something like just bishop f4 to bring it back to the king side, is that mate?
This one?
Yeah. Thanks for the tone of voice.
I wasn't convinced by that one.
Your incredulity was noted. It's not a move I'm particularly crazy about, but I just wonder whether.
Okay.
I think Tom's made me want to demonstrate that Black isn't really getting mated, rather than Black has an okay position. No, queen f3. I'm not crazy about this for Black. No, he may be right. After knight h4, it may be that it's quite
could be mate
dangerous attack. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that was D.
That was d4. I mean, I think I'm even more surprised that Black, as Tom says, didn't meet
So okay, so Ravi played d3.
Yeah, and now Tom's point about d4 being tempting for black here, I certainly very much sympathise with. That looks like the move I would play unless I found some good reason not to, because it's very disruptive, isn't it? It's clearly not part of White's game plan to have to deal with all this extra tension in the centre. So
yeah, White wants to be attacking.
So I'm guessing that it's difficult. It's slightly difficult here for White to avoid ending up with a black pawn on c3. Almost whatever White plays here, it feels like there's going to be a black pawn on c3. So after c takes d4, black can play c3 or something like that before taking back the pawn, I guess. And after knight takes c4, black's going d takes c3. So one way or the other, black will end up with a pawn on c3, which I'm with Tom on this. I don't think this one is mate.
Yeah.
It's a move you want to look at because, as I say, it's so disruptive. It doesn't allow White the same sort of easy development that Ravi's going to get otherwise. Okay, let's move on though, because I'm a bit worried we haven't looked at all at the women yet. And
okay, so d3.
Yeah.
But
yes, d4 feels like. I mean, it'd be very interesting to know what Ravi had in mind there, but it's possible we won't.
d5.
Okay.
And Ravi took.
Yes, well, one reason you might take is if you'd come to the conclusion that d4 for black was more of a problem than you'd realised at the time, and you wanted to cut that possibility out. Because a move like a4 looks quite tempting here, but it may be that he wanted to rule.
White could still play d4 here.
White could play d4 here, but playing d3 and then d4 would be a clear admission of error, I suppose. Black can go. I mean, in this case, black could play a5, I suppose.
Yeah.
Having gone b5. And that gives White a few things to think about on the queen side as well. Because White can't play a3 because of the pin, so I think that would be a bit awkward. But I wondered if White could play a4.
a4.
Then I guess then the players have to look at d4 for black all over again. But a4 feels like a more natural move.
Yeah.
Okay, so he took on d4, and we're getting another centre cleared of pawns, I think, aren't we?
Yeah. So Ravi took c4, d takes.
Yeah.
And Ravi kept the queens on with.
Well, he's got to keep the queens on because it's mate, isn't it? Apparently.
Yeah.
I think having the queens on is fairly pivotal to White's plans here, and I think the black queen needs to find squares. So if the queen stayed on d8, I guess rook d1 might be an awkward move to meet. Slightly. Not catastrophically, but it makes sense for the queen to come and find other pastures. Queen d6.
Cutting out knight h4.
So now, if rook d1, where was the queen going?
So rook d1.
Probably going to f6, as in we're about to find out. Yes, it's got the f6 square. That makes sense, as in the game. So yeah, let's see the game because that will cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there is sadly no mate anymore, I think.
Oh.
Ravi missed mate, like Thompson.
Rook b8. And takes.
And rook d1.
6.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, so something bad happened. Wait a minute.
Oh my word.
Just seen the engine.
Oh god, something very bad has happened unless there's a.
So knight d5.
That looks like a very strange blunder for a player of Ravi's strength, unless there's some. I mean, I think black looks sort of comfortable after queen f6, but that's no reason for White to suddenly go knight d5. So what's happened is that black took that knight, of course, and then has taken the pawn on b4 using the pin, and this looks.
There was presumably a trick against.
Yeah, queen c3 would be met by Bishop b2, I suppose, and then, as Tom would say, and that's mate. And it's even more mate with the rook on the 5th rank. But it seems to me almost inconceivable that Ravi would have completely overlooked knight takes b4.
Yeah.
That is not...
Well, it's possible. 1927 says my choice.
Yeah. His engine's a lot better than ours. So okay, now if something like Bishop
not
G5,
just the pawn, right? This is swapping off.
Well, if Bishop G5 or something, then Queen takes C3 is hitting the rook and the bishop and the other rook, and every piece is attacked. So, absolutely, if this is really the correct position, I have no idea what Ravi can be intending.
It has to be the correct. I guess it's the correct position.
I guess it has to be the correct position. I mean, we don't
have this, do we?
But it is a mark of my respect for Ravi that I think we've got too many.
So takes.
Yeah.
Here. You can always just defend it because even if you just go backwards, the queen.
Well, it fails various tests. The bishop f5 test and the putting the queen on the diagonal test. Queen g6 would work. Oh no, queen g6 maybe less. Bishop f5 will work, won't it? I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So here, and bishop f5.
Yeah. By the way, no, bishop f5 seems to work. Okay, white can take on f5 and take on b4, but white's given up a lot already. So, no, this seems disastrous if this is correct. I don't understand what Ravi can have missed. What's his thinking time? Oh, still only 3. I guess we'll find in the course of the next few moves whether this is correct and whether we've missed something. Yeah, okay. That's a kind of... I mean, it's a mark of my respect for Ravi that my first assumption when I see this is that something must have gone wrong with the transmission, because it's just not... It's not something Ravi does at all these days that I've seen blunder like this. But yeah, of course, it's difficult when there is always a temptation when you've used a lot of time. Even I have the temptation to speed up when I've consumed lots of time, but it's always important to get the timing of the speeding up correct. And, okay, let's leave this slightly depressing site for a moment, because a few moves ago I didn't like his position as much as Tom did, but I liked it. Okay, and now it just seems to have all gone wrong.
Yes.
Okay, shall we take a quick look at the women, because we haven't been there yet. And
okay, so if I share this one. Okay, here we go. So the English women are playing against Croatia today. And let's start with Kata, who is white on board 1. Another Caro-Kann.
Well, yeah, I must admit the theory of this sharp line I'm not very au fait with anymore. I remember losing a horrible game as black when I was quite young, and relatively young. And after that, so after d5, so white plays knight f3, the so-called 2 knights variation, I think. And well, the point of the 2 knights variation is just worth mentioning if anyone doesn't know that if black now plays a la mainline Caro-Kann and takes on e4, I think it's fair to say that after knight takes e4, the knight f6 lines are probably still reasonably respectable for black, but the bishop f5 line, which is obviously a very main choice, is not okay. After bishop f5, knight g3, bishop g6, h4. The usual white is basically a knight f3 tempo faster than usual because he has saved time on playing d4. So something like h6 for black gets met by knight e5. The bishop has to move, and then there are all kinds of things like bishop c4, maybe queen h5, something. I can't remember. Queen e6, queen e2, I think is quite enough to put black off this forever. White's threatening winning. It's an incredibly unpleasant, just one small difference from the main line is just incredibly unpleasant. So that is not but what black does get that they don't get in the main line is a sort of, is a bishop g4 pinning the knight on f3. and potentially solving the problem with that bishop. And I think this is a very decent move, and I'm inclined to think that after h3, all the safest lines involve black taking on f3. But of course, white hasn't played the move d4 yet, and white doesn't have to play the move d4. And after black ceded the bishop pair, white often plays with quite a closed, slow center. So, the other side of the coin from what I said a few times about the bishop pair and not necessarily wanting to open the position. Here, white gets the bishop pair and actually tries to keep the position closed very often in order to consolidate it and only open it up later. So bishop takes f3, and that is the main line. Bishop h5 is an ambitious move, and I sort of analysed it a few years ago and definitely decided it wasn't as bad as I thought. But I kind of still think it's a little unnecessarily risky for black. Yeah. It's sort of complicated. There are so many complicated lines have to know these days to play even an opening like the Caro-Kann. I'm not sure. This is one more, which I'm not sure it's very economical to bother with. Anyway, what Kata does is the challenging stuff. So white takes on d5. So, as a pure exchange variation, that doesn't look terribly promising. But white's idea is to play bishop b5 check and a quick knight e5 under circumstances which do not lose the queen.
Yes.
So g4, bishop g6, knight e5. This is very much the challenging stuff. Rook e8. I don't think there are any other moves particularly than rook e8. Maybe queen d6 is legal. I can't remember. But, white has a choice of ways of playing this position. So she can play d4. And probably d4 is sensible. After that, perhaps the choice comes in e6. And now, I think I was really quite surprised by Kata's next move because I don't see any need to clarify the situation by taking on c6, relieving black of the pin. White's got a few ideas here. Some are just to develop very quickly with queen e2, that kind of thing. But white also has the sort of ideas we were looking at earlier in the advanced variation of making a quick h4 potentially embarrassing for black because, the knight on e5 is perfectly placed for meaning black can't meet the h-pawn move by just creating a square for the bishop. So
what about h4 here then?
Yeah, h4 here. It's an important move, I think. White almost never wants to take on g6 when black can take with the h-pawn. But if the h-pawn moves, white always wants to take on g6 when black can take with the f-pawn. So this move, I can't remember the theory here. There's some complicated theory, I think, beginning with bishop.
They do f6.
Maybe bishop. No, f6. I think it's a little bit weakening with a quick queen e2 coming for white. I'm not entirely sure that's not similar to how I lost my game all those years ago. I think some kind of f6 when I thought I had bigger problems than I really had played a role, but I can't remember here. But this is one idea for white. The fact that black can't play h5 means this is a moderately, it's a dangerous enough position. You really need to know what you're doing with black. And I think this looks more promising than what Kata did, taking on c6 with the bishop for no very obvious reason. But okay.
Yeah. Okay, so Kata took.
And b takes, of course, and then queen e2. So okay. I mean, Kata does have a plan. She's, instead of trying to chase the bishop with h4, she has an idea to try to put the queen on the e-file and then chase the bishop with f4, f5. Now, I don't know whether that would have been her plan, even if the queen stays on d8, because in that case, she has to take account of queen h4 check and things as well.
Yeah.
But when the queen departed to b6, at this point, she didn't take a time out to defend the f-pawn. She went straight in with f4. So I assume that queen takes d4, f5 is very bad news for black. H4 might be a threat. Yeah, I kind of think h4 feels like a threat in all these positions. But yeah. h4 could be met by... No, maybe h4 can't be met by anything. Okay.
So if she takes here...
Yeah, then f5 I think is very nasty because the e-pawn can't take because the discovered check is a queen.
Okay. Not quite checkmate, but it is a queen.
I mean, it could be a rook and a bishop, but I think you'd rather have a queen. It's certainly not something black wants to allow.
No. Okay, so 97 makes sense. Oops.
So 97 makes sense, I guess. And then castles. That's very interesting because, you know, when white played queen, I guess maybe queen b6 was partly directed against stopping castling queenside.
Yeah.
So, you know, it means that if the bishop moves, white at least has to look at some queen takes b2 or something.
And against castling kingside, maybe.
Castling kingside is a nice, simple solution because, you know, although black can take the pawn on d4, maybe white's going to get some quite scary compensation. Very interesting, sharp idea from Kata, actually.
Yeah.
So the queen has, as far as I can see, only one legal, well, decent square. And now f5. Okay.
Oh, this is exciting.
It is very exciting. So the idea is, okay, so the knight and the bishop together look like they might be enough to prevent f5, but white's trying to...
Takes 93. 93.
So white's removing one of the pieces from the e-file and thereby showing that the knight is going to be, you know, taking on f5 will be vulnerable to...
Bishop discovered
checks again. Yeah, this looks very interesting.
So queen d6. So have we got bishop c5?
Well, bishop c5, maybe queen e6.
Although
that also, sorry, bishop c5, queen g3 check is what needs to be avoided.
Yeah.
Yeah. So bishop f4 to prevent queen g3 check.
Yeah.
And now I suppose if queen e6, white simply moves the queen, and then the queen is going to be vulnerable on e6 as well. So queen, probably another fianchettoed queen or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe not another fianchettoed queen. Let's have a little think then. I was just trying to move without... I was just trying to do what looked natural.
Yeah.
Still looks natural.
Yeah. Well, we can overrule the computer.
Well, we can, but I suspect it may... Because this is so sharp and tactical, I think it may have a point. But okay, let's see what it wants to do. So it probably wants to take on... Maybe it wants to take on g4, and when we go rook e1, then take on h3 as well. I wonder if it's trying to sort of create a square for the queen by taking all our pawns off.
Maybe.
Yes, that's probably what it wants to do. Yes, that's probably... Tom's probably right about queen f2. I didn't want to put it on a... I was a bit wary putting it on the same diagonal as the king, but it's probably true. It has some... Maybe even queen takes a7 might be a move at some point. What it crucially does is avoid this g takes h3 hitting the queen, and therefore it reduces, in fact, the number of squares available to black's queen. So let's check f takes g4 anyway, for the sake of argument.
Rook e1.
Well, I guess rook e1. I mean, knight c5 is a sort of tempting move too, but rook e1, yeah, rook e1 feels natural. Maybe it's not. And I think the first thing to note is that queen f5. I thought rook e5, but the queen does have an e6 square as well. So who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
Well, after queen f6, I mean, even h takes g4, threatening g5 looks fairly scary. I mean, black feels very tied up here.
Yeah, because
okay, it's not so clear. Black can take on d3 and actually create a square for the queen that way. But it all looks pretty scary for black, to be honest.
Yeah,
I like Kata's idea. Nonetheless, queen e6 looks to me more challenging than queen d8.
Yeah.
Seems to give white a lot of leeway. So how do I want to do this?
Yeah, so
I mean, I like white's compensation anyway because it's going to be difficult for black to develop pieces, and white has some quite nice positional compensation. G5 is a very positional approach to it. I like White's positional compensation after this, but you kind of can't help thinking that there might have been something more direct. I wonder if there was, just before G5, was there something more direct here, I wonder?
Well, like 95?
Maybe. Or even... Well, if we move the bishop somewhere, we're threatening G takes F5. I don't know if there's somewhere we can move the bishop, which is really attractive, and therefore the threat becomes serious. Well, rook A1, yeah, exactly. That's another very nice move to have, just building slowly. Yeah. I mean, I was trying to find something more direct, but yeah, okay. He has a point. From a practical point of view, that's a very good practical move. Okay, I think Black will do very, very well to defend any of these positions. It looks incredibly...
it does look hard, just because this
incredibly scary for a human player to play this.
And that rook's blocked, and it's all just a bit... Yeah, tricky. Okay, so Kat has gone G5.
Yeah, she's done a very good job. I mean, by the way, her opponent's quite... I think her opponent... I mean, her opponent's only about 20 years old, but nonetheless feels like quite an experienced player, and the daughter of a grandmaster and a bit of a Caracan, somebody who I've seen show some pretty serious knowledge in the Caracan before. So I think this was a very good practical choice, apart from anything else, by Kata.
Yeah.
F6, having said all those nice things about in a Svitan, I find the move F6 rather extraordinarily ugly. Sort of really, I mean, if your opponent's got a knight coming into C5, you should play F6 with the utmost reluctance, I would have thought. I mean, the bishop can still theoretically defend that E6 square, and presumably she's playing it partly to bring that bishop back to life. But that is horrible. So do you know much about Kata? Are you in a position to tell me anything about her background?
Not especially.
Okay.
Yeah. So I know she's been playing a lot for. She's been playing all the 4 NCLs, doing very well there, and I think she was playing at the time of the online Olympiad. She was also playing Polish League.
Right. Okay.
But she plays a lot of chess.
Yes, no, she does play a lot of chess, and she played it. She played extremely well in the British Women's Championship, didn't she?
Yes.
At least for a period of the tournament, she beat the 2 sort of highest rated players in the tournament. 2 women grandmasters and IMs, I believe. Yeah. Sorry, no. I mean, sorry,
IM and GM.
Ketty, sorry, IM and a GM. Ketty is a GM.
Harriet IM and Ketty GM.
And Harriet, an incredibly strong IM.
Yes.
Back in the day, and Ketty a GM. That's right. Sorry. So she had a fantastic tournament there, and yes, she hasn't really found her form in this tournament. This game looks like the first taste of what she can do, because she is aggressive, and this is a position I'm sort of quite excited seeing her in this position. Okay, so as Tom said, you go rook A. There's a school of thought that says you go rook A1, and then it's just obviously a good move to contribute to the attack. So bishop F7. Now she took. I mean, takes gives Black some resources as well. I suppose it gives a possible rook G8 check. It gives. I'd sooner do it without taking. I don't see the need, because I don't think Black's ever going to be taking on G5 very, very enthusiastically. So it's not entirely clear to me why she wanted to clarify that. But okay, but the position's still, and the knight coming to C5, as we said, this is all flowing pretty nicely. There's the rook G8 check. And now the engine really doesn't like King H2. Let's try and just get a handle on why that is.
What's wrong with King H2?
I think it is. Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's just occurring to me that this is really ridiculous, because King H1 allows D4 and Bishop D5 check. So that is just, King H2 must be right.
Ignore it, yeah.
And what on earth is Black playing next? That's the question. I can't see.
So how are you untangling? You have to do... you can't really get the queen out.
Yes. Yeah, he is a strong player, and I've been on the end of his King's Indian. I've been on the end of his King's Indian as well, actually. And I don't know the game you're referring to, but obviously Lubomir Fatachnik was another King's Indian specialist in his day. So, maybe the game you're thinking of, Sweetheart, was White. Actually, he certainly. I think he was probably. I think that those guys were on both sides of the King's Indians.
I mean, White is threatening here, right? Knight b7 and knight d6.
Absolutely, that is a very, very unpleasant threat, which is presumably what motivates the. Otherwise, not. What motivates Rook b8, and obviously Rook b8 doesn't meet some of the needs of the position, but it's not going to be. It's not tempting for White to take it either, because White's bishop is such a fantastic piece. So, yeah, knight b5 is the first serious threat.
Which might be why she took on f6, because if you want to just keep your bishop where it is now.
It doesn't. Yes, that's true. If Black could have deflected it with f takes g5 in that case, although I think that would have opened a whole can of. Oh no! Yeah. In that case, there would have been a queen d6. No, there wouldn't be a queen d6 because there wouldn't be a rook g8 check. So it's too easy to try and read all this backwards. But anyway, the knight b7 threat is very strong, and Black's position looks horrible. I don't really see any way for her to defend this, to be honest.
Yes. All right. So she played. So the threat for White, or one of many threats, I guess, is knight b7 into d6.
Yeah,
picking up a lot of stuff.
There are a lot of good threats, but that one does have a certain extra.
So Black defended with rook b8.
Yeah,
and Kata didn't even bother taking that.
No, I really wouldn't take that. You need that bishop. That's a the bishop is just better than the rook.
Yeah, and the knight is too.
But I also love the knight. I mean, I'm not sure if I wanted. I'm not sure that knight a6 is the only way of doing this, but maybe you put the rook on b7 and then you bring the other knight. I mean, okay, the knight is great, but it can be replaced by its colleague, and it's also pretty good on a6. So
okay. So, but look, she's put both her knights on.
Yeah, she's chasing it. The other one's coming. That's
two knights on the rim, but they're okay. They're not.
No, they're awesome. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. Tom points out that Black has real counterplay after bishop takes b8, but it's not a move it's not a move he would even give 10 seconds to, I don't think. Because you just feel that White deserves to lose if they grab the rook on b8. Now,
Kata wasn't doing that.
No, this is great. I think Kata has really she's found her form this game, and now White's threatening. Oh, rook b6. Wow. Okay, so White's threatening knight c7 check. Oh no, that's not quite true. I thought she was threatening knight c7 check and then knight c5 check, but there's a square on c8. Well, she's threatening knight c5 first and then knight c7 check, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that Black can't develop any pieces suggests to me that Black can't develop any defense either.
I wouldn't like.
Yeah, no, this has gone a bit weird, but I actually find White's play here is very sort of positionally sound as well as aggressive. So I'm less worried about modern chess with this game than I am with some games. I find this one less confusing. It's a good old-fashioned attack going on here as well. Great, good stuff. Let's have a look at the others.
The next one.
Yeah, it's really good, really nice stuff from White.
Okay, so Maria.
Okay.
Maria, who I notice is streaming at the moment, but I think she has.
I hope she's got someone on her team streaming.
Yeah, I think she has a friend who's streaming her game.
That's the sort of thing I had in mind when I said presumably we won't be seeing Gawain this afternoon.
Yeah. Hi, Chris Baker.
Hi. Okay. Yeah, bishop c7 is probably all right too.
All right,
okay.
Let's see.
Let's have a look at this one.
What Maria's got? D4.
Yeah. So a
G3 not a London system.
No, not a London system. A G3 king. There seem to be, I don't know, there seem to me to be even more G3 Kings Indians around these days than there used to be. I'm sure people who used to play other sharper lines have now realised that G3 sets them quite annoying problems for black inside. There just seems to be a lot of it. Medic. Okay, she is a very experienced player, I think. I've seen her around playing for Croatia from very, very long.
Did she? Is that her? Has she always been called that?
As far as I know,
Mirjana Maric at one point.
No, Mirjana Maric is somebody else.
Yeah.
That's Elisa Maric's sister.
Yeah.
Elisa Maric, who became a politician for a while.
Oh right. Do they still play chess?
Not sure. Certainly not to the extent they used to, but I'm not sure if they still do.
Okay.
So C4, proper G3, King's Indian. And yep, E5, H3, that's all fairly standard stuff. Okay, rook E8. I mean, there's several different ways of playing these positions. Yeah, there's lots of other ways to play, but we could end up with a very long discussion of possible lines in the King's Indian. Well, knight C6 is possible before E5 and possible before other moves like A6, rook B8, which is kind of thing Gawain does a lot of. But this is one. I mean, these positions, the way to characterize these positions overall, I suppose, is that white gains quite a lot of space, but black tries to make defending that extra space and that pawn center a bit awkward in various ways. There's a sort of mixture of tactical and positional ideas to try and make that a bit awkward. Okay.
Thanks, Tom. See you later. Thanks a lot. Bit worried about the open team. Oh dear.
Lots of swindlers over there. There's respectful approach. Thanks, Tom. Nice to see you. Yeah. Well, see you, sort of hear you.
C5.
Yep. Rook E1.
You're actually not. You are threatening to take the pawn. Yes. Okay.
You are now threatening to take the pawn, but now it's kind of in several positions. It's kind of debatable whether white wants to dislodge that knight on C5 with B4. White can do sometimes, but needs to be quite careful about how directly she goes about that. Bishop D7. So that means that black thinks B4 immediately is not an issue. Otherwise, she would have played. And one good reason sometimes not to play A5 too quickly is that knight DB5 can be an annoying move, stopping black subsequently playing C6 or something. I mean, one notable feature of how she's playing this is she's avoided the move C6, which features in a lot of black's lines in this 53. Yes.
So white could not play B4 now.
Well, could play B4, and I guess black has judged that this is not worrying. I don't know. I mean, I don't think black has anything as direct as taking on E4 and playing C5 at the end or something, although that's going to lead to some crazy two pieces against a rook position, I suppose, which probably a bit complicated to go there now. And the other thing, I mean, after B4, knight E6, white also needs to make sure that black isn't just going to have a quick C5, which breaks up the thing.
Yeah.
They're tricky. Rook B1 makes some sense, but of course it's nice for white if it's a position where white can prove that black is missing the move C6. So after A5, for example, with no A6 in the position, there are some similar positions where knight DB5 would be an annoying move. But I guess here black can actually take it because the knight can't recapture because the E-pawn would be insufficiently defended. And the C-pawn, well, that might open up some other possibilities like a quick, I don't know. Not sure about that. Tricky. I'm not sure. I mean, they're very complicated, these lines. I'm not an expert, but I have some idea what. In general, black is trying to find enough counterplay that if white can consolidate the position completely, it is quite a lot of space that she has. So B3, A4. That's a strange move because now she's provoking.
Now B4 is
B4 with the white rook already off the diagonal, and that feels a little bit more risky. So I think if white doesn't play B4 here, then A4 is a good move. Black gets to open the A file when white's rook's left it. But with B4 on the board, that a4 might prove to be a bit early, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And now, well, black's threatening to take on d4 in that position, so white has to do bishop e3, I guess, is possible. But again, white may have to reckon. No, bishop e3 looks quite a sensible move to me. Just keep that knight there for a moment longer. Although there may be something I haven't seen which gives pause for thought. I mean, there could be a c5 move, but that requires some real calculation. My hunch is it's not very good. But knight f3, that's not the square I would have wanted to go to if I were white, although I can see why she might. She might have some ideas even to play e5 here and, try and show that the bishop on d7 isn't where it wants to be.
Right. Oh, knight g4. Okay. Knight g4, I was thinking, what's that? It is opening up.
Yeah, I mean, knight g4 moves feature a lot in this line, but not all. This is an interesting tactical.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the knight's not unprised because of, well, it is unprised, but it's not a problem because the bishop takes c3. So knight d5 makes sense, and then the knight will be coming to e5.
Takes.
Oh, takes is strange. Oh, no, that's very, very odd. I mean, it seems to me that in all these positions, black should be delighted if white takes and allows d takes in a moment when the d4 square is a big weakness.
Yeah, because this knight's already placed to just hop straight in there.
Well, the knight's well placed for d4, and the white knight can then be kicked out of d5 as well fairly easily.
Yeah.
I mean, it may well be that it can be anyway, but it's going to be an awful lot easier to kick it out once there's a knight coming to d4 for black. D takes. I mean, white shouldn't have allowed d takes e5, I don't think, and black should certainly have played it. Also, because after bishop takes, her bishop is going to become a target for what could become a target for a timely f4 and things like that.
Yeah, so we're thinking this is the move, really.
This is definitely the move, and then knight d4, and it seems to me quite like white's quite likely to have to give up the dark square bishop for that knight, because the knight's going to be such a monster otherwise, and the white knight isn't an equivalent monster because black can kick it away with c6.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a real moment.
Yeah.
Okay. I should add one thought to that. Actually, white can try to use the knight being on d5 by playing c5 after d takes. That might be what put Maria off. Because now if black does play c6, then the knight can always hop to b6, which is a useful addition to its repertoire. But I think after a move like knight d4 in conjunction with bishop b5 or something, black's doing very fine here.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a missed opportunity. And, after bishop e3, which is what Mirjana played, c6 isn't so easy to kick the knight away with now because, again, the b6 square is available. Sorry. Excuse me. So, I think that was a real opportunity, and now it's a little bit unpleasant again.
So bishop back.
Yeah.
Queen to 2.
You always got to be careful with, even with strong engines, you've got to be careful with their assessments in the King's Indian, because it's a general rule that computer engines as a whole just don't like the King's Indian. They just don't get that black has counterplay in these blocked central positions and all that. So whenever you're preparing to play the King's Indian with either colour, it's not a bad idea to, you don't switch your engine off, but you certainly take no notice of its assessments most of the time. It's strange because most of the openings which the engines don't like, they've sort of come to understand over the years. But the King's Indian, I think they're fairly unreconciled.
Yeah, maybe the King's Indian isn't that good. I like.
Yeah, I'm sort of inclined. I'm inclined to doubt. Maybe that's true in a really higher sense, but it's incredibly difficult to prove, I think. Yeah, exactly. Humans love it.
It's nice, isn't it?
That's a good indication of your humanness, Kevin Winter. That's a very reassuring.
Well, that's the new computer test. Are you a robot?
Yeah.
Do you like the King's Indian?
Like the King's Indian? That would solve all those silly things.
No, I hate it.
You don't have to spot how many cars there are in a picture anymore or something.
I'm too bad at that, I tell you.
It's terrible. I never get those right.
But I could always say I like the King's Indian.
Do you love the King's Indian?
Yeah.
F4. Okay. So yeah, f4, f5 is a very sensible plan for white in this position. c5. Okay, so this is another way of trying to use the d4 square, but it would have been a lot easier to just do d takes e5. This one it's going to be a nice knight there, but white is going to get a fair bit of attack on the king side.
Yeah, and that d pawn.
Yeah. I mean, this weak d6 pawns, I kind of think black survives in the King's Indian because they've been, that's, I mean, Kevin mentioned the 1950s and Zurich and all that kind of thing. But it's kind of in the 1950s that the Soviet grandmasters demonstrated that black can play with what looks like a really weak d pawn and get away with it. But I think the kingside attack coming here with f4, f5 is more worrying.
Yeah. 94.
Okay, so 94 and g4 again. G4 looks reasonably natural. I don't really understand what's wrong with g4. I guess that there may be. Is there some tactic which the engine has spotted? I doubt it. I don't see any problem with I just think that white has quite a dangerous attack here, and obviously it's a nice knight on d4, but I'm not sure that black should be happy to put up with the sort of kingside attack that she's going to have to put up with in return.
Yeah. Okay. So
rook b8. Okay, it's a funny moment.
Right. So is f no? It's just okay. White plays rook f1. I guess.
Yeah, I wonder whether there was some. I wonder whether there was something with taking on c5 and taking on b8 and an f6 coming or something, which was particularly dangerous.
Yeah.
I think that might be. Can we just check that? I think that could be it. Because if you take here, then I assume that if d pawn takes, then maybe some bishop f4 is going to be awkward. Although there's bishop e5, so I'm not. Yeah, then maybe once those bishops are exchanged, queen h6 is very scary actually. So let's assume b takes for the moment.
B takes.
And then I guess we take on b8 and we can play f6 very quickly.
F6.
Yeah. And if bishop h8 we can at least maybe black can sack an exchange there. Okay, the engine doesn't like f6. Maybe bishop h6 is also a serious idea because that king just, if you can exchange that bishop, then anything with f6 is going to be horrific. But I mean, okay, so bishop h8, there is a knight e7 check, but exchange sacrifices should be part of black's armory in this opening. So rook takes e7. And then some move that rounds up the e-pawn like queen e8 or something. I don't know. I mean, I think that white is better here because there's a b file for the rook and the rook's going to enter the position. But, it doesn't look absolutely terminal.
Yeah.
Okay, so she played rook f1, which also makes sense.
Yeah. And we've just got a few moves. Bishop c6.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if she gets a chance to take that knight, she should definitely do that because the knight is, it's the dark squares around the king are the problem, and if you can play bishop takes a dark square attacking piece, that's a good thing. Sort of almost as simple as that. I mean, the threat I fear is what white gets to do in the game in a moment, which is to take on g6, play bishop g5 and knight f6 check, and unfortunately whatever she was meant to do, this can't be. After knight f6, I don't know how she's going to survive even the next few moves. Oh, she can. I suppose she can give the exchange. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly don't mind.
Oh, glass of Beaujolais sounds nice.
That does sound good, yeah.
Queen d7. Okay. Right.
Yeah,
fine.
So knight f6 check is alarming.
It does look.
Knight f6 check,
you could even do it the other way around, couldn't you? And bishop f6, I suppose.
No, if you go bishop f6, I'll take the horse. Then I think I'll drive. Yeah, that's why I want to go knight f6 because
knight f6 first.
Bishop takes d5 was the move I was really keen to avoid all round. This one's really scary, but okay, I think black has to take, and after bishop takes, she has to go rook e6. It's the only way to stave off mate, I think.
Rook e6, and you're going to give up this rook, huh?
Again, we're just going to have to give up the exchange, and it's it's not the exchange, because obviously the exchange sacks you want in this position are ones where black has the dark squared bishop. Here they're just ones where all you're going to get is that light squared bishop. But okay, it is certainly what she has to do, isn't it?
Takes and takes, yeah.
Takes. Yeah. But it's a bit difficult even to see how she navigates the next few moves.
Because that f pawn still, like, you might get.
Well, I think she has to go queen e7, rook f1, rook f8, and then hope for the best. But I'm not sure the best is going to happen.
Yeah. Right. And she doesn't have that much time left either, so it's looking. I think it's looking hard to defend.
It is looking fairly difficult.
That's okay. Do you want a couple of minutes break, Peter?
I probably should, actually.
I think I will too. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're just going to be. I'll leave the stream on just on the next.
Then we'll pop back to the other.
And we'll be back very soon.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. See you in a moment.
Okay. Hello.
Welcome back. Okay, I've got Sharia's game up.
Okay.
And the first thing I notice is she's got a good time advantage here.
Oh, that's very good.
Yes.
Yeah, time trouble has slightly plagued the team in this tournament, hasn't it? But
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now, do you want to see the? Given it's time trouble, we could just see the.
I think maybe we should just stick with the game as it's. So this looks a little bit to me like a sort of familiar minority attack where when black's got b4 in, white's then taken it, and actually the minority attack may not have particularly benefited the player who's playing it, because my hope is that the rook on c6, which is defending that e6 pawn, actually needs to stay on the 6th rank. And so far as I can see, white, as long as the tactics work, white's going to be able to drive it off.
Yeah, because if rook b6, you could just go bishop a5.
Yeah, now I'm not sure if that's true, because you need to check. There are details that need to be checked. For example, after bishop a5, you would need to check rook takes, and after rook e6, maybe bishop h4. Sort of, so you look first for moves which move the bishop and simultaneously attack something.
And now everything's on prise.
Now everything's on prise. So white's bishop's
and now
on
who knows what on earth.
Bishop's on prise, and you need to. So this is probably the line that white wants to play, but she probably quite rightly realizes that you need to put in a bit of calculation to get there. But it's quite possible that even something ugly like g3, trading the bishop on a5 for the one on h4, is not a bad idea, because at the end of all this, it may be revealed that black's bishop was actually a really good defender, and now in this position, queen e5 is a very strong threat, because black's queen. Oh, sorry, rook e7 check is also a strong threat.
Yeah,
but queen e5 is there as backup, so that bishop was defending against a whole multitude of unpleasant things going on, and this is obviously very, very dangerous for black. So
this is checkmate.
Well, that's when I said it's dangerous. That's kind of that's the essential danger, isn't it? Checkmate. So yes. So this could be quite attractive for white. I'm not quite sure what black can do after b5, but
yeah.
And if she's short of time,
so b5, and actually black has gone rook there.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay, so bishop a5.
However, what black can do, I guess, is go rook d6 after bishop a5, and then rook back to b6 after bishop b4.
Here.
Yeah, she could just stay. Oh no, that's right. This is where I thought white could play bishop c5. That's right.
Bishop c5. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the idea. I knew I had an idea, but I forgot what it was.
Yeah, because you can't stay on that.
Yeah, now she can't stay on that line. So yeah, so there were definitely tricky questions being asked of black in this position.
I think this looks great for Sharia.
It does look.
And by the way, everybody, if you were watching the other day, and we finished the stream, and Sharia was exchanged down in an endgame, exchange for a pawn. She had a knight and 4 or 5 or something, like say knight and 5 against rook and 4 or something like that, and we said this is looking difficult. Well, it wasn't difficult for our Sharia. She went on and actually queened a pawn and won the game. Yeah, so she got a win the other day.
Yes.
And this is looking very promising too.
I just have one thought to throw into the mix. Can black play bishop takes c5, d takes c5, and then d4? Just trying to mix things slightly.
Let's see it. So here. So okay. So we just.
I suspect the answer is no, but I just wanted to check. So then I guess you just have, as white, you just have to keep your pieces on that line. You go rook e5, I think.
Rook e5, pawn d3.
d3. Queen yeah. I just wondered if if you go queen e3, black can then go d2 and actually finally drive one of white's pieces off the e files, thus complicating the task a little bit.
All right, wait a minute, wait. I've got a different idea. So d4.
Yeah.
What if we go there?
Maybe. I see. Yeah, you're not threatening the rook anymore, but you don't need to be. Yeah, that's probably a very good move. It occurs to me that there might even be rook h3 as well, because you can do another after d4. You can go for another line of attack, can't you? Go rook h3 and queen e5. I think one way or the other, this is very good for white as well. So I'm not quite sure what black's meant to come up with. Has she moved? Like her clock is
sure
no longer.
Black moved. Black put the rook in. Oh no, it has moved. Bishop a5 did happen.
And queen takes b5. That looks like a very pragmatic choice from Black, trying to. But okay, it still looks very good for Shoei because I assume that White's going to take the rook, and then because of the pile up on e6, Black has to trade queens at that point.
Well, you could take on b5 and take on e6, couldn't you?
You could. Yeah, that's just a pawn. I mean, if the bishop moves, I'm not sure that's more than a pawn. The other thing, you could take on e6 immediately, and after queen takes e2, you take back on e2, and then you're hitting e7. I mean, there's several different ways of doing this, but then that's just a pawn as well. But that Black can move the bishop, so that's less good. No, I think the original. I think taking the exchange is probably
if you move
right.
the bishop, we take the rook, right? Or you move the rook back here.
Move the rook back there, or possibly the old bishop h4 trick again. No, I think move the rook back there is better. I think, or indeed to b. No, that's right. You've got to go back there. I'm getting confused now. I think taking the exchange is fine here though, because Black has to take with the rook, and I actually think White still has. But okay, it's a tricky choice. It's not obvious. It's not obvious which is the right way to do that. No, Black has to take the queens off, otherwise rook e6 is still.
Yeah. So takes there.
Takes and then rook 1, I assume, and then rook b6. But okay, there's a d4 weakness which White needs to be a little bit careful with, but there is a passed b pawn. I mean, this should be pretty good, but of course there's some work to do. So okay, let's can we take a quick look? Have we seen all the games? No, we haven't seen Zoe yet. Let's see Zoe.
Let's see Zoe. Yeah, that's the current position, by the way, on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Zoe.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. What happened there? Why did you take the queen? That wasn't a good idea.
So queen takes b5.
Yeah, that was not a good idea. That was one of the moves we weren't recommending.
Okay.
By doing that, she's taken the rook off being on prise.
Yeah.
And so I still don't see why Shoei's not doing quite well, but that's not the move I was hoping to see, I must say. I think I think people are so used to situations where people get good compensation for the exchange. There are so many good exchange sacks in chess these days that you forget that sometimes the exchange is still a really serious advantage, and bishop h4 is the move I was concerned about. So she has to go g3 and Black can take on a5.
Yeah.
And that's not the version we wanted at all. That's a real shame. That is much worse than I was expecting.
Yeah.
I still don't see why after g3, if she takes on a5 and we take on on h4, I'm assuming that Black. I was assuming that Black can't take on b2 because of rook e7 check, but actually the king might be able to escape to f8 and then to g7 and h6. And because, White could threaten mate with rook h8 at the end of all that, but Black gets mate in first. You see how sharp the position suddenly becomes. You've got this kind of double rook endings get ridiculously sharp very quickly sometimes. So, White can try to get a mating net with rook e8, rook 1 e7, and then rook h8 after king h6, but Black's just mating first, if you see what I mean. Yeah. King g8 might be better, but I'm not sure it's a huge difference. Anyway, Black's in first. That's the trouble. I thought king f8 is probably okay as well. King g8 perhaps is better, but either way, Black clearly has enough counterplay to prevent White from prosecuting the attack in the way she wants.
Black's actually played bishop takes g3.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to think about how that affects things, but how it affects things, I think White's structure is just a bit tidier. I mean, I'm not sure. As Black, I might be happy to be pawned down with those particular set of, weak f pawn as well as weak g and h pawns. So,
yeah.
But okay, in some ways, it's a similar position. It's still the case that White can't go all out for an attack because of, because of the king being weak on the back rank. So,
Right.
Okay. Let's take a look at Zoe and then maybe head back because we're getting into time trouble territory.
Yeah.
There's going to be
Let's see.
some interesting things going on in the open as well.
Here, so I'll flip the board. She is black. Okay. What was this openings wise?
It kind of transposed into a Catalan. So White played 4 Queen A4 check in a Queen's Gambit accepted.
Okay.
And Zoe just kind of took it into a kind of open Catalan. And those Queen A4 check lines in the open Catalan are not usually very scary for black. They are, White a lot of White's really sharp sacrificial lines they have to play to avoid the fact that Queen A4 check isn't very scary. So,
tell you what, on most boards, people are up to about move 37, and this one's only up to move 24.
Oh wow! So who's playing slowly? Both players, extraordinarily slowly. Okay, White is really short of time, actually.
Yeah,
but I do think, well, it's tricky. The only reason I think White might be a little bit better is because once White's queen vacates that E3 square, it looks like a really nice square for a knight. Kind of blockading black's e-pawn and...
Yeah. So Zoe should not take the queens because then the white...
I wouldn't want to take the queens. I think that, I think black's pieces still look quite active. And if I think I'd be inclined to try to use that by keeping the queens on the board. So if she can play knight... wait, I've just seen a bit of a problem.
What's that?
Well, I'm a bit worried that if she moves the d7 knight, rook takes f6 is going to be a really scary exchange sack, just sort of blasting her kingside pawns apart. There's some queen takes h6, knight d5, all those kind of things to follow. Oh, I'm not sure that's true. I mean, depends.
If you put your knight in on e...
Sorry, I'm just reading Kevin Winter's comment. I'm not sure that... it depends what you mean by amateurs. I certainly can think of some... I can think of I get quite a lot of Catalans in various tournaments I play against, not particularly strong players, but maybe there's a certain level at which the Catalan is rare. It is relatively hard to understand. Yeah, there's plans. But it can be complicated stuff. It's actually quite easy to play with White in some ways. You sort of your basic it's unless some of the sacrificial lines are complex, but the basic development for White is quite simple and flowing, and there are ways black can get it very wrong. So I'm not sure what's Zoe going to do here, because the move I would want to play is knight e5. Oh, she's played knight c5. That really worries. I was going to say knight e5. I was just seeing whether she could meet rook takes f6 with knight g4, which might have solved the problem.
Okay. So is rook f6 is the worry here?
Well, it would frighten the life out of me. I wouldn't be worried by that. Yeah. With knight d5 and queen f6, queen takes h6 coming.
Queen here.
Well, either immediately or with knight d5 first. Maybe immediately. Yeah, just frighten the life out of me, I would have thought.
Yeah. So knight here, a queen here, maybe.
Yeah, and then I don't know. Well, do you have a good reply to? Oh no, maybe. Whoa! Sorry, something just crashed. Rook d5 to h5 looks pretty scary. Yes, sorry, Chris Baker was there just before me.
Rook d5, yes.
That's pretty unpleasant.
Okay, wait a minute. So this is pretty forced, though.
Unfortunately, it is. I think it's incredibly... I think this is just something she shouldn't have allowed. And she's very fortunate her opponent hasn't played it, I think.
Oh, good. I
like this undisguised patriotism. We don't... not worried about the position. She didn't do it. So
I'm glad. Yeah, okay. So White's gone h3. All right, but...
Yes, I mean, you can see why you might want to cut out... But the best way to cut out knight g4 is to whip it off, basically.
Okay, so but Zoe can now defend against this thing, right?
Yes, I mean, I do think that White has a bit of initiative anyway, but the most drastic thing has not happened, which is rook takes f6.
So what do we do to defend? Rook e6?
Well, rook e6 perhaps, and then I suppose you have to reckon with rook d8 check or something.
Yeah.
But that might be fine. King h7 might be the end of that. But there's knight f4 coming in with tempo then as well. So I still think it's a little bit worrying, but...
All right, then knight e6.
Yeah, knight e6.
Knight e6.
Knight e6 is the other move you can consider.
But
I mean,
knight comes into,
you know,
you can...
I don't know if it matters much that a6 hangs. It might do. Okay, yeah.
I'm mated.
Sorry?
Losing your a pawn is better than the other line we just
saw. Losing a pawn beats getting mated.
The thing is, right, so say you take.
Yeah.
Can't you like knight here or something?
Maybe I might go rook f6 again, please.
Oh. I thought I was stopping all that with my.
Well, you've certainly taken the worst of the sting out of it. Yes, exactly. No, I mean, I think 96 is probably what Zoe
should not believe this one. I must say,
96 is probably what Zoe should be doing here. I think. I just don't think it's. I think if White plays it sensibly, it's still not a easy task for Black, but it's certainly a lot better than Rook takes f6 would have been.
Kevin
that was a bit of a fortunate let-off.
Yeah. Well, thing is that the white player has only like half a minute left, so you'd have to do it in, like saying in overtime, in on increment, and you've still got another 20 moves or 15 moves to play on increment. So you kind of depends whether.
But I think ultimately, I think Grischuk is right that when he said that you don't. If you give mate, you don't have to reach move 40. I mean, he's obviously in a sense right, but I think that attacking is kind of easier.
Look, Chloe's gone queen b7.
Oh, so no, then she still hasn't latched on.
Still on, and then White's gone knight f4.
Neither player has really realised that this exchange sack is devastating, which is a bit surprising, actually. I mean, after queen b7, that's another opportunity for White to just whip that knight off.
Yes. For sure.
Again, one could do in a heartbeat.
So Zoe's doing counterplay, which I think's
counterplay is fine, but it's still not clear to me that a takes.
Might at least distract White.
Well, a takes b4 followed by an exchange sack might still be pretty nasty. But yes, distraction is obviously good. But now there's even knight d5 hits the queen, so it may be that even if White hadn't realised before, she may realise now. That's a bit worrying, actually. That's not good because. It's back to +6 again because rook takes f6 and knight f, I think, to d5 is devastating, unfortunately.
Oh, yes, because it hits the queen as well.
It hits the queen as well. So now it's, I mean, that's the trouble. It's gone sort of from a combination based on judgment to from a sacrifice based on judgment to a combination. And then even if she didn't play it before, she may play it now. So...
Yeah, and if she had been just sort of thinking for 30 seconds and decided against, she might.
Well, she might be very tempted by the.
Yeah.
Yeah, when people don't play something, it's impossible. There it is. Unfortunately, this is not good at all. I mean, that's the moment where it sort of starts to look like a forced win rather than it's easy. It's possible to not realise it's a win in the other line, whereas here, it's just. Working tactically, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yuck. This is not good. Poor Zoe. Not good at all.
All right. Shall we check out the open
Let's check out the open team again. Oh, can we just see if Kato has I mean, Kato was in a position where she might Yes. A little bit like just see if Kato has put this away because it looked very promising. Very promising.
Good.
Okay.
So let me flip the board.
A lot has changed. She's an advantage into an queen. Yeah. Okay. I mean, there were plenty of positions where rook and bishop can fight against a queen, but not usually with two extra.
Not against two passed rook's pawns.
No, not two passed rook's pawns. Those are going to be tough. Excellent. Okay, this looks very promising. I'm sure Kato is going to do the job on this.
Good. Go, Kato.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go back and see the open team then and see what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe we could kick off with Gawain because we could see who's looks critical, but Gawain was so exciting when we left.
Yes. Okay. That was I had it on Luke. if we're just looking at the position, it's that d pawn might be a.
By the way, in the position before rook c1, the engine was looking very pessimistic for black. I'm wondering why white can't just go d6 and d7 and take on e5 or something.
Yeah.
So d6. I guess the answer must be that. Well, might be something to do with king f or rook d8, d7, king f6 or something, but it looks a bit suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So rook c1 might be a slight missed opportunity, but things haven't gone well for Luke, have they?
Rook c1, and he's gone e4,
which is a break you'd like to make. But f takes e4. That might, again. What about after e4? I mean, my first thought was rook c7 or something like that, because rook e7 obviously loses to d6. It's a particularly embarrassing way to go down.
Yeah. So you'd have to move your king.
Well, I mean, it looks. I mean, I wonder whether f takes e4 by white might be one of those safety first moves which people often benefit from when they're as strong as Luke, because opponents are, even when they're better, they're sort of keen to make sure they don't lose first. If you sort of,
no,
I think that happens quite often, and I think players do benefit from that. And I wonder whether that's what's going on with f takes e4, because rook c7 looks to me more to the point and quite scary for black. So.
Yeah. Okay, and so actually we've got the position, but with those moves.
Yeah, but that's clearly wrong, because now there's no d6 after rook e7, so that makes all the difference. And that's
extra possibility.
That's a total save for Luke, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's made all the difference in the world. So rook c7 first and then f takes e4 would have been nasty, I think.
Yeah.
And even not clear to me that f takes e4 was. Yeah, I suspect that was essential. So White's job in this position now, having slightly lost the plot like that, is probably to make sure that he doesn't lose.
Yeah.
It's very easy to go down from once you've gone wrong. It then affects your cycle. Okay, knight c8 is a threat in this position, I think.
Yeah.
It's not it's not such a threat, because you can go rook e8, rook takes e4, rook takes c8, but it wins a pawn for white, so it's still a threat. Yeah, so white can try and use that fork on d6 to threaten knight c8 and rook takes e4. But actually, if black played g5, I was just going to say knight c8, rook e8, then rook takes e4, rook takes c8 is not a problem. So I think g5 is probably a decent move.
So Luke's got away with it, we're hoping.
I think Luke's got away with it. I mean, white could go knight c8, rook e8, d6, but I think that, you sort of feel that could start to be, I don't know, I wonder whether it starts to be risky for white as well at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's quite a sharp way of doing it for somebody who was clearly avoiding any danger just now. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, no.
Okay, let's check out Gawain.
Yeah, let's go to Gawain, because we haven't seen it since that crazy position with the queen on g2 and everything.
Yes. Okay, so this was our analysis. Let's go to the actual position, which is here, and let's flip it so we've got the white pieces. Here we go. This is us.
Ooh. This looks good. Yeah, I mean, Gawain's got an extra 2 pawns, the safer of 2 unsafe kings, and the better minor piece probably as well.
Are we mating?
Everything is good.
Sorry. Yes, I was going to put my king on priest.
We're not mating, but if queen c2 check, I think we have rook e2, and if bishop takes, then knight f5 is mating. So.
Oh, nice.
That's
nice. I'm going to show that one.
Yeah.
So here takes, check. Here.
And then queen h4.
Checkmate.
That's pretty nice, isn't it? So.
Yeah. Nice.
I mean, this is a very clear. It would be interesting to know what happened after that opening, but I think that Yannick's opening looked to me quite risky. I think he took a few more risks than was really necessary. And interesting to see this early G4 move, having such a success. I suspect it's due for some...
Oh, yes, that was right. This was G4 in the...
Yeah, G4 in the advanced Caracal.
Was it on move 3 or 4 or something like that?
It was on
move
4, yeah. Can we just see whether Black took on E2 in that position where after knight E2, we were discussing bishop takes E2. Oh, he played F6. I don't think that occurred to any of us, did it?
No. F6. No, we were talking. Yeah, we were talking.
Because I think what I said was that if Black doesn't take on E2, then bishop E3 and rook D1 looks nasty, and indeed it does. And yeah, I think Yannick kind of got this one all wrong.
Yeah.
Yannick Pelletier is one of the relatively small number of players in the world who has, outside the elite, who's beaten Magnus since he became world champion, amongst other things.
Okay.
I mean, Yannick used to play. Yannick's obviously, being one of the top Swiss players over many years, has played in Biel a few times, which has given him quite a lot of outings against some very, very strong players. But yeah, I think it was one of these team tournaments that he beat Magnus. And yeah. This looks like it's going very well for Gawain, which is great.
This is great for Gawain. And they're on move 37.
Oh, that's happened in the game. Rook E2's happened. How lovely.
Yes, this has actually happened.
I'd be surprised if Yannick missed that. I suspect he might have been trying to put himself out of his misery.
Yeah, no, I just think he didn't have much to do. And
he didn't have a lot to do.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Let's look at the next one. Bishop to E2 has happened, actually. Do you want to... Let's stay here, actually, and see the mate. Mate in 2.
Come on, Gawain.
Knight F5. Knight F5 happened. Oh, he's allowing
the mate to be up to it. Yeah, Yannick is very sporting and will, having started the combination, he'll allow the mate, of course, which he's done.
Although Gawain's having a bit of a think about it.
That's cruelty. Just get on with it, Gawain.
Slow roll.
Hope you spotted it. Yeah, right. There we go. I think
very nice. Well played, Gawain.
Well played indeed.
Okay, so that's 1-0 up for England.
I probably shouldn't tell the story, but Yannick Pelletier once rescued me from a swimming pool.
Oh, really?
I was walking along with all my clothes on, like normal, just wandering along, and failed to notice a swimming pool. I have to say, this is the only time in my life this has ever happened. It's a one and only swimming pool oversight. But I just walked straight into the swimming pool, and he immediately dived in and rescued me, which was rather
nice of him.
Yeah. Well, he's a very, very nice person, and but I'm still glad he's just got checkmated. Yeah. So what can you say? Well played, Gawain. Excellent, good stuff.
Okay, so now let us see. David.
Yes. No, but there were a few witnesses, I have to say. This swimming pool incident.
Looking at knight d6 in Howell's game.
Ooch.
Was it preparation?
What was that saying about preparation?
Question from Puron Prof. I was looking at 13 knight takes d6 in David's game. Found it strange Giordas played it so quickly. Was it preparation?
I mean, it could have been, because I'm not sure that I don't think there was anything in the moves David had played up to that point which was so difficult to predict. So it's possible that if he played it very quickly, it may well have been preparation. I mean, why not? It's
neither of them had spent long on any of them.
It may well have been preparation for both of them, but they may have,
Oh, sorry. No, David spent a long time on the move just before that on knight e5. He spent half an hour. I mean,
okay.
I wonder if...
but I mean, okay, it may well be that White...
During David's knight e5 27 move, think...
I mean, it may well just be that White knows that that's one of the main ideas in the position anyway. But 95, I can well imagine that was preparation for... It's a big positional transformation, but it may be a big positional transformation that happens a lot in that line in many similar positions. I wouldn't be at all surprised if that wasn't preparation, And yes, he can be thinking in David's time as well, of course, yeah. So how bad is the current situation for David?
Well, there's lots of pieces around his king, I'd have to say.
Yeah, this is what I said, as it turns out, slightly carelessly. I said I thought, in the position they had, that the opposite coloured bishops were more likely to end up being a drawish factor than an attacking factor. But actually, White's attacking the king now, and G7 is quite a difficult spot to defend precisely because of the opposite coloured bishops, as often happens. The attack is focused on one particular square, which that other opponent's bishop can't make, and can't defend.
Because David can't do things like Queen E6, because you've got like Queen F8 and Queen H8, and that's mate.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, he's threatening Queen takes G5. That is very true. So,
sorry, what's Queen takes G5?
White threatening Queen takes G5 and Knight E7 check, winning a piece. And so King H2 is taking out Queen C5 check, which would have been the answer to it at that moment. So,
Okay, so this is the threat. I'm just going to show it.
Yeah.
So it takes. Oops. Oh no. Sorry, he's moved it. Yeah.
I was just going to say what I was about to say was that Black can't defend G7 with the bishop, but because there are knights on the board, he can defend that square with the knight. And although things look still slightly awkward for him, that may be a decent enough defense.
Yeah.
For example, I haven't quite. I mean, once that knight is there defending G7, he may even be able to look at a move like I don't know. It's still quite awkward. Queen C5, perhaps, is that possible? But it occurs to me it's anyway met by Bishop D6, perhaps. I don't know. It feels it's definitely more pleasant for White to play because White has a lot of leeway in his moves that Black doesn't have. But
both sides were short of time, but actually they have now reached time control.
Right.
So
okay, yeah, and David and things have improved a bit for David, I think. If there's
one thing I was just thinking of in general, I'm thinking Black does not want to. My thoughts are Black doesn't want to take on G6 just because then the pawn would come in on G6 and then Black's king gets kind of very restricted.
Yeah, exactly. That's incredibly scary for Black. I mean, it's sort of, the opposite coloured bishops mean that G7 hasn't been that easy to defend, but with the knight on E6, you certainly don't want to be allowing White a pawn on the 6th rank, creating mating squares around the king. That would be very scary. So, yep.
Having said that White's pieces around the king, it's not obvious to me how you would break through.
No, I'm not sure that you do. I think it was quite important to get this knight to E6. I don't know if White missed something in the last few moves, but it feels a lot safer now that knight's there, because it was quite hard to defend G7 before.
Oh, hang on a minute. Haven't you got queen? What about queen take? Oh no, queen takes queen take. I was just getting worried then.
That's one way to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, queen.
There's nowhere to particularly to move that queen. That's very exciting.
So queen A7 or something to threaten knight E7. I guess Black needs to decide how to respond there, but
yeah.
But okay, he's going to have a think now because they've reached move 40. So maybe we should.
All right, let's check the next
go
one.
To someone still in time trouble.
Let's check Ravi. Now Ravi was in trouble because there was.
So the match situation at the moment is that Gawain has won.
1-0. It's 1-0 to us.
Yeah. So David is a bit worse. Luke is probably okay, having been a bit worse.
Yeah. And so this is the one, Ravi, and we saw in the opening there was this trick that White.
Yes, indeed.
That Black did. I'm going to just flip this board. There was a trick that Black did to pick up a pawn on B4 because there was a pin to that down that rook.
No, this looked really grim when we were here.
Yeah, this was it. This was exactly it.
So
if I just take it back a move, and so it was here, and so Black can just take this pawn, and I'm thinking that was just a blunder on Ravi's part.
No, that's without any doubt just a blunder on Ravi's part, and his job now, well, from there on, was to try and make the best of it, which I think he's
and so
maybe done. But it's a very, very strange blunder for Ravi to make that. I don't quite understand how that happened.
I mean, I suppose blunders happen, and that
they do, but not very often with Ravi at the moment, and not that one's not the level of blunder I would expect him to make. It's very, really, really unusual for him, I think.
Yes.
Just a momentary. I think maybe he was too busy checking that queen takes c3 lost.
Exactly.
Remember that it usually blunders like that happen when you're focusing on some other move, and you forget to have your final check. He's very good normally at final checks and considering all the candidate moves and things, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So how bad is this then? Because white's now threatening knight takes d3. So I think
I'd say it's slightly better than it was. It's better than it was at the point when he blundered.
Yeah.
So at this stage, I guess white can. Well, okay. So white could win the b pawn with rook d5, but then his own c pawn will come under fire with rook e3, I suppose. Although, rook d5, rook e3, knight a2 is probably met by the primitive but quite effective bishop b1, and the knight can't stay defending c3.
Mm-hmm.
So
so it's going to be. It's looking like it's going to come down to a swap of that b pawn for the.
Well, I think white would probably do well not to let it come down to a swap of that. So he probably ought to try and hold on to his c pawn.
Okay,
even if it means not. I mean, so maybe something like check on d8 and then knight d5 or something. I'm not sure. Again, they've just reached move 40, so I think we can expect some slowdown around here.
Yeah, he'll have a bit of a think, won't he?
So by the look of it, Ravi has not only done well to reach the time control, but for things not to be worse than they are, but he's also done reasonably well to have just reached the time control. But okay, it still doesn't look good. But it doesn't look really easy for black because he hasn't got quite the ideal minor piece for kind of making easy progress, I guess.
Yep. Okay, shall we pop in on Scotland and Wales?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Let's see how they're doing. Okay, let's do that. Is that?
Yes.
Right. So there's some results there. Okay, so it's all Scotland Wales is 1.5 all. So we had Gregor Toshek having a win against Alan Tate. We had a draw between Jason Garcia and Andrew Muir, and Freddie Gordon got a win against Lee Davis. So the last game going is it Alan Pleasance against Adam Bremner?
Yes. So. Okay.
So Scotland playing white here, Wales playing black. I suppose white can get this e-file, is that?
Well, I don't think this position is as much better for white as the engine. Is to the human eye, so obviously that much better for white as the engine says. But
maybe f5 actually.
Well, f5, I think it allows queen e5 check. Otherwise, it would be no. I think it would be a problem if you couldn't do anything. If you couldn't do something about it. But I'm trying to think. I think that if white is much better, it will be something to do with danger to black's king. But I can't. Yeah, something like queen g2 is what I wondered. If queen g2 and you might be threatening queen a8 check in some circumstances, and you're coming to the g file with the rook in something.
I like that rook queen a8. Yeah, I hadn't noticed.
But I mean, for the moment, queen a8 can be met by rook f8, so it's not that clear. But yeah, something along those lines is what I guess might be scary. I'm also slightly surprised by the capture away from the center there. I was expecting b takes, not only. I mean. From a positional point of view, it feels useful for white that they can flick in a5 at some point to mess up black's pawns a bit more. Now, I don't think that's going to be the most decisive factor because I think king safety probably is, but that feels like an odd capture away from the center in terms of, the textbooks.
I might want my bishop on d5.
Right, you might indeed. How are you going to get it then? Yeah.
So say we do Chris's move, queen g2.
Yeah. Okay, so black needs to play moves that keep rook f8 on the table against. So let me just go something like, I don't know. No, that then there's a potential problem with rook g1, but let me go queen d6 or something just so that I can't. Engine's not impressed. I wanted to have queen takes f4 available against rook g1 and rook f8 available against queen.
Yeah, you do have two pieces attacking that.
I do.
And a piece attacking my bishop.
I do.
So I'm not sure I actually like. I could do
queen g5.
G5, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because you can't take bishop on d3. And
you can't really play knight f7, I don't think, when I can take on h5. So, on the other, what's white's next move?
That's what I was just thinking. What's white's next move?
Yeah. White could play bishop e4 and put the bishop on d5 and make you happy, Natasha.
Yeah, I know, but then they go queen d2. Oh, but then I can drop back to.
Well, no, I wouldn't pin yourself. I'd just go king h1 and see what they're doing next, because the queen's still attacking the rook and the knight, isn't it? So.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good plan.
So it looks. I think there are ways for white to make this quite awkward, but
yeah. All right. Shall we check Ireland as well while we're checking?
Yes.
Our friendly teams.
We've got so used to Freddie Gordon victories that we don't comment.
Oh, we're not even. Should we have a look at Freddie then? Yeah. All right, yes. Freddie. What do you want to do? See the game?
No, I don't want to see the whole game. Just see how the end. Let's see what the last few moves look like.
He's got two bishops aiming at the king again.
Well, he set the exchange for a vicious couple of bishops. That's not.
All right. Do you want to see the last few moves?
Yeah, just see how this arose. Oh dear, it looks like basically Lee blundered on move 22, according to the engine.
All right.
Book A1. Let's just see. So queen D7. Oh yeah, basically, I think he's allowed bishop G4 because you can't take it with rook E7, and then the clever bit, which is bishop D1 to C2. It's a nice little redeployment. Yeah. And then, rook e6. That's a nice one.
Oh, pretty.
That's vicious.
So now, hang on. So what's all this about? So if you take on h4, you just take on g6, and you're delivering mate.
Yep. And if you don't take on h4, you also take on g6, and you're delivering mate. So
okay, nice tactic from Freddie Gordon. Aged.
It is.
Oh, it's Freddie. Is he 10, 12?
He's certainly not 12.
I'm going to actually look it up and tell you the actual.
He was 10 in the summer, but I am not sure whether he's had a birthday or not. I mean,
I couldn't tell you
he was born in. If he hasn't, then he's got a birthday before the end of December this year.
I'm going to remember his birth year, 2010.
Yes, he's 2010. So he's most likely 11, but he may have a December birthday or something.
Yes, well, that's a nice.
Anyway, whether he's 10 or 11, he's doing rather well.
It's a good tactic. You got to say that's
a very nice tactic. I actually know his opponent quite well. He's a very nice guy, and I feel a little bit sorry for him at this moment. That's a tough one to lose like that. But nice tactic, Freddie. Really nice tactic.
Yeah. All right, and then we're going to check Ireland. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So actually, Trisha's drawn. And 3 games
still going on.
So Taran.
Let's see Stephen Jessel in a winning position. That would be cheering.
Okay. Yeah. Stephen Jessel in a winning position. There's lots of bishops against knights today, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. That's what it's all about, really. Chess in a nutshell. Okay, yeah, this is presumably winning, but I mean, it's not kind of. Maybe he can play something like. No, it's just a very nice advantage, isn't it? And that B pawn isn't really going to register much counterplay. And okay, there's still a little bit to do, but not. I think that's a reasonably safe. Bishop E7, yeah. That was one of the sensible things, because now I think the knight wanted to come to the other circuit via e6 or something, but now it can't because bishop d6 is a strong reply. So that makes sense to me. Okay, that's good. That's good.
All righty. Right, where do you want to check now?
Let's pop back and see how the women are doing.
Let's do it. All right. That one there. Kata has won. Well done, Kata.
Very good. As we thought she would with those rook pawns. That looks fairly efficient. That was a very nice game. That was, I mean, she's really had a bit of a rough tournament up to now, and that was, I hope that will be a breakthrough for her in her form for the coming days, because, you know, she's a much better player than she's shown up to this point. She really is. So,
yes,
that's
very nice game. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right. Maria has lost.
Yes, we were afraid she
was looking tricky. It was that King's Indian game.
Oh, so black played rook e6 and white actually opted to win the pawn rather than force, I think, the win of the exchange. But nonetheless, that shouldn't be ridiculously clear, although it's obviously a definite advantage for white. But
yeah, this is the final position here. That was our analysis. So.
Okay, that's not good. That's okay. That's good. Yeah. I mean, not good, but clear enough why that happened.
Yep. Right. We have also. Oh,
yeah, Zoe's lost. Oh, of course, we left it off.
We saw it. It was this.
That was pretty. Let's just see how that finished off, because we did talk quite a lot about rook takes f6. Oh, she made it to an endgame. That wasn't inevitable from that point.
Yeah. So that was. Where were we? About here.
Knight ft5. Yeah, and then she took on b2. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then this is very, 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 very dangerous.
Exceedingly dangerous. It's mate in 3, actually.
Oh, it's mate in 3.
Yeah, I think she missed knight g8 check after here. Is that right? Knight g8 check, I guess.
Knight g8
queen d6 to d8.
So knight g8 check here. Queen d6.
Oh, how quick was that? People will think I used an engine for that.
Very good. You've been studying your tactics, Peter.
I've been doing my mating patterns.
You're very good. Very good. yeah. Okay. So that didn't happen, but it was still
unpleasant things still did. Yeah. No, I mean, it's clearly lost in lots of other ways too.
Let's see the other one. So we need to win this game to draw the match.
Yes.
And this is Shoei. Now remember, Shoei did pull an amazing win.
It's quite difficult to get an almost symmetrical
rook. You can't win this one, can you? Well, it's going to be hard to win this one.
Well, it's
can't black take on
black's move, and she can take it. Well, I suppose if she takes the pawn, she loses the d pawn. So there's still something to think about. But I suspect she probably should take the pawn anyway.
It will now, if I were
flavors here, I think.
Team captain, I'd just tell this player. Well, no, maybe you don't. Maybe you don't these days.
No, you don't do that when your team is. Oh, what if you were
black? If you're black,
Croatian team captain.
The Croatian team, yeah.
What are you going to meant to say? Take the g pawn?
No.
That doesn't go down well, I can tell you.
Yeah, maybe all right. So she can just draw.
You say I'm only looking at the match situation, not the position, but do take the g pawn.
Exactly. That's the sort of
okay. Yep. Okay, that looks
yes.
Dead pawn, I fear. Okay, so let's take one more look at the open lot and see how if anything's changed. Because we were due for some long thinks, weren't we? So we may not have found a lot of progress, but we can have a quick look.
Ravi, we were on. So let's see. This one was a tricky one, and it is a long think. So, is it? No, that didn't. No, it isn't a long think. We've had a few moves.
He's done pretty much what I said, playing rook d8. I said then knight d5, but actually rook d8 first makes more sense, and then knight d5. So he's done essentially this idea, but well, I guess there's also a slight issue of whether bishop d3 to f1 is ever a problem.
Yeah, if you do that, I suppose you can defend with knight.
You can, yeah, and maybe it might be more a matter of white finding a move after bishop d3.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, still possible, but
tricky.
A bit worse than tricky. I think very, very likely to be a problem. But okay, yeah. I mean, it's it was such an awful blunder that Ravi made in the opening, so uncharacteristic that it was always going to be massively uphill from there. And given that, I don't think it's a terrible outcome what he's got at the moment.
All right, Luke's drawn.
Luke's drawn. Yeah, that was good. I think it was a little fortunate that White played f takes e4, but
yeah, we'll take that though.
We'll take that. We'll take that. So go
let's see David.
David is defending this position. Oh, so this is not yet any more moves by White. This is where we left it. White has been thinking for 19 minutes.
Gosh, that's a long time.
We're back where we were. Well, I mean, yeah, you can't. I guess that it's one of those moments where you have to try and concoct a plan, and you also need to make.
Yeah. How much extra time do they get, though? I thought it was only half an hour.
Yeah, it's only half an hour. This is a heavy.
Use 2/3 of it on the remaining
time. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's good for David, isn't it? I mean,
it is good for David.
Assuming the guy can't work it out.
Good to see. No, there's nothing. There's nothing.
Hi, Wilsonia. Why didn't Ravi play Rook takes B5? Says my chess.
What was that?
Can we just pop back there?
Yeah, do. I'm curious.
If I can find the right one. Here's Ravi.
Oh, sorry. Rook takes b4. Aha. I didn't realise that was. I hadn't really taken in that was how they got there. I'm pretty certain the answer will be that if he does that, then Bishop D3 to F1 really is an issue. But it nonetheless, because it's the queenside pawn might be more important than the kingside pawn, so it might still be a very good question. But I'm sure Bishop D3 will be the reason he didn't. It's just that he might have been wrong to make that the reason. Oh, wait a sec. There's all. I mean, I suppose there's also. Sorry, there's also Rook B3, which could be a reason.
Yeah.
Rook B3 could also be a reason. Sorry, because then the.
So here.
Then the C pawn drops, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But what's.
The engine doesn't seem to mind it that much.
Well, sort of. Not going to be too keen anyway. What? Yeah, not so. I mean, one or the other of those. Maybe this is a better. Then I suppose White has to try to go Rook C5, get behind that pawn and try and hassle it a bit. I don't know. Rook B3 certainly is a reason, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's always two questions, isn't there? There's always what is the truth about this move and why the player didn't do it. They may be two different things. That's a good enough reason not to do it, in a sense, I suppose. So that's almost certainly why he didn't do it, whether or not he was right.
Mm-hmm.
However, Rook C5, Rook takes C3, Knight D5. This doesn't look like a ridiculous way of trying to cause a bit of trouble, but Black has Rook C1, so Rook C2, Knight E3 isn't to be avoided, I guess. But Rook C1, it's not totally clear to me that this wasn't an idea for. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. I'm going to find out the name of the board one of Switzerland.
Oh,
yeah. How do you say that?
Bogner.
Bogner. You come from Bosnia, Estonia.
There's D6.
All right.
That was our variation, wasn't it?
Right. We were.
So David.
Okay, so he has now played a move.
Oh wow! We didn't.
Wait a minute.
Consider that plan. Of course, putting the knight on E5. I think I see what White's idea is, and it's possibly very clever. Unfortunately, I think he's trying to put the knight. Oh no, maybe not. I thought he was trying to put the knight on E5 and then meet something like bishop takes h5 with knight d7 shielding the queen from, but no, there's queen e8 there, so it's not a problem. That is not.
No, wait, let's see it.
No, none of that made sense.
Oh.
I'm getting tired. So I'm not sure what I'm not sure what the objection is to playing some queen e8 or something, but
yeah.
Because then we're actually in a position to threaten to take on g6.
Yeah.
Come what may.
Yeah.
I mean, it may in effect be that White thought for 20 minutes to see if he could find something and didn't find it, and so played bishop d6.
Yeah.
That move doesn't look scary to me, I think.
Yeah. All righty. I guess we could wrap up here. It's looking like if David does manage to, this is going to be the key game, right? If David does manage,
well, I think whether Ravi can.
Or see if Ravi can hold. If Ravi can hold, we're looking very good. Yeah. If David draws and Ravi loses, we draw the match.
Right.
Yeah. So that's. I think on balance we'll draw the match.
I'm quite confident about David holding this now. I should say that with caution, but I think I feel fairly confident about David drawing. But I'm not particularly confident about Ravi getting something, but it's possible. We still have some slight chances to win the match, and very unlikely to lose it, I think.
Yeah. Excellent.
But who knows? Since our show ray prediction, we've become more cautious, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
The women's team is. What was the final result? So Qatar won a lovely game. That was a real
Qatar
highlight.
Won. Maria lost. Zoe lost. So Shori needs to win, but it's
almost certainly going to be
worse side of a Rooken
pawn ending. 1.5, I think. Okay.
All right. Thank you all very much for watching. I'm going to be back with Matthew tomorrow, and then with Peter we'll be back on Saturday, won't we?
Brilliant. Yes.
Yes. Excellent. So thanks all. Thanks very much for watching. Oh, sorry. And I'll be back for the Quarantine League with Danny Gormali tonight. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. Okay. Thanks everybody for watching.